control.
Hello and welcome to the Bigham's Banquet. This is the centrepiece. This is the moment you've all been waiting for as part of the Bigham's Wells Food Festival. And we have chefs up and down the country, and we have all of you wonderful viewers up and down the country. Some of you are singles, some of you are couples, some of you are entire families, all cooking along this evening with, as I said, some of these amazing chefs. Tonight's event is all for a fantastic charity, Chefs in Schools, and we're going to talk about that in due course. Now, there is a lot of work to be done. Some of you who've been paying strict attention have already realized that the work started this morning at 10 a.m. Were you dehydrating your apples at 10 o'clock this morning? If you weren't, don't worry too much about that, because Merlin LeBron Johnson's recipe, and I'll just mention this at the top of the show tonight, you don't have to have dehydrated your apples. You can use fresh apples.
You're going to give the game away already, William. Look, we're 2 minutes into this banquet and you're already giving people shortcuts. Okay, all right, well, that's what's to expect.
It's a tough assignment, but actually what we want is for all of you to really enjoy yourselves. Cook along with us, cook along with lots of our chefs. And if the going gets tough, remember that you are cooking along at the same time as the professional chefs. These recipes are designed for professional chefs. And as people like me know, when it comes to chefs and recipes, well, they don't necessarily translate certainly into books. So we say we're sorry about that. But the point is to have a great time, have a glass of wine, and some of you might be drinking some of my wines, and we'll talk about that in due course, and just have a really great time. Now, before I introduce Rich, who's the man who spoke a second ago, just a quick reminder. So tonight is all about Chefs in Schools. It is the most fantastic charity seeking to encourage and enable schools across the country to serve great, delicious, nutritious food, and specifically creative school food to get kids and their gastric juices and their imaginations really soaring at a young age. We want to fill children up with good food, but also fill them up and feed their imagination. Now, how could you miss him? Sitting alongside me, this is Rich. Now, on some shows, Rich is a man in my ear. On this show, the man in the ear is the man here. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Rich.
William, thank you very much indeed. Well, I think I've already shown that I think my main job today is mainly to heckle you.
Interrupt.
William, to interrupt as much as I can, but also to be letting you know how you can get involved at home over the next 3 hours. We're going to have polls. We're going to have ways to share your beautiful creations. There'll be a chance to ask questions of our galaxy of fantastic chefs. So watch this space for more. Well, William, were you going to say who you are? I'm sure everyone knows who you are. Of course they do. But
Rich, you're so kind. My name's William Sewell. I am the Telegraph's restaurant critic. I'm a food writer, broadcaster, occasional scribbler. My reviews appear in the Saturday Telegraph. And what was today's review? Oh yeah, the Halfway House, an amazing restaurant it's actually an inn in Shropshire. Queen Victoria was on her way, halfway between one place and the other. They didn't call it the Princess Victoria, they called it the Halfway House, which I thought was rather original. So I write for the Telegraph and various others. I do a show called Biking Talk, and I have a little business. It is the world's smallest wine store. It's called William's House Wines. And over the course of the evening, I'm going to talk you through some of those wines, because quite a few of you out there have been purchasing those wines, and very sensible that is too.
How did you validate that claim, William? How do you know you're the world's smallest wine store? Just look, I'm sure this is the question all the viewers are asking. How is it the world's smallest wine store?
I can actually assure you there is no wine shop in the world that only sells 8 wines. 2 whites, 2 reds, 2 rosés, 2 sparklings. Sometimes we only sell 1 rosé, in which case we might sell 3 reds or 3 whites, or maybe 3 sparklings, depending on the season. So what I'm trying to do is to make the idea of buying wine, because there's so much choice out there, I'm trying to make it as simple as possible.
Okay.
And we're trying to make tonight as simple as possible. And let me tell you, by the way, that if you are going to cook the venison, and I hope many of you are cooking the venison, some of you who can't get hold of venison are using steak. That is absolutely fine. But make sure at this point, and it is now 18:05, preheat your oven to 220 degrees centigrade. Make sure that your oven is on, okay? Now, a few things that you need to do. We need you to marinate your venison, if indeed you're using it. Use 2 garlic cloves, smash them in a pestle and mortar with half a teaspoon of salt, and add some finely chopped rosemary leaves. Smear all over the venison, the mixture, and marinate for at least an hour out of the fridge. You've got plenty of time to do that, but try and get that done now. You should also now get your beets in the oven. So if you haven't, do that now. Line a baking tray with foil and lie on top of a dish. Don't you lie, but make sure the beets are lying on a dish. Beets, garlic, rosemary, and oil, and season it generously. Toss together with your hands, get nice and oily, add a splash of water and roast for 35 to 40 minutes, by which stage they should be tender and a little gnarly and crisp on the edges, because I don't know about you, Rich, but I like a gnarly venison.
If they're not gnarly, I send them back normally with a smile, but gnarly I think is key here. Many of you will already have done that, and congratulations. If you have gone through every single one of the bullet points in your advanced prep list from the guide which you have sent through, congratulations. Can we give them a round of applause if you've done all your advanced prep?
And if you have done your advanced prep, put your hand up. So many of you, that's incredible. Well done.
Look at this. This is a
this
is a good show, actually.
Look at all those people who are working so hard. Those of you on your own, well done. You're really going to cook. Can I say, please, do get in touch all the way through tonight's proceedings. Rich can tell you more about that, but we want to see your Instagram posts. We have a special hashtag.
Supper sorted.
Supper sorted. And also, we'd love any questions you have for myself. Even the man who's normally in the ear, who's the man who's here, Rich, he'll take questions. You can ask him who he is, where does he live? And any of the chefs who are joining us, whether they've been on the screen, whether they're about to come up on screen, please do. The show is very much about you and your participation, so we really, really would love to hear from you, please.
Excellent. Is it time to introduce Charlie?
I think that would be a very good idea. Now, one man is behind this great banquet. His name is Charlie Bigham. He has his name on meals that you can buy in supermarkets up and down the country. He's a man who has traveled the world extensively in his quest to find incredible ingredients to then create in his kitchens fantastic meals for you so that your life can be a little easier and certainly a great deal more tasty. Charlie Bigham, are you there? You're in Wales. Good evening, Charlie. Very nice to see you.
Good evening, William. Very nice to see you too.
What an amazing kitchen you have there. Is this your own private little professional kitchen? Where are you exactly in Wales?
We're actually in our Somerset kitchen, which is in an old quarry. You can't really see that because it's just darkness is just falling, but it's a very lovely place. So I'm here this evening. I'm going to be cooking along, which I'm much looking forward to. And actually later on, one of the chefs is going to be joining me.
Great. Now, tell us a little bit about where the idea for tonight's banquet came from, because of course we were expecting to have a real Bigham's Wells Food Festival. Of course, that couldn't happen. But tell us about how tonight, the germ of the idea, and also you must have some pretty well-connected chefy friends because you've lined up quite a sparkling array of culinary talent.
Oh, well, that's very, very, you're absolutely right. We've got some fantastic chefs tonight, William. But the idea, I mean, we've been supporting the Wells Food Festival, which is the most lovely festival, which always happens this weekend every year. We've been supporting it in a small way for the last 3 years. And then this year we've sort of, thrown our lot in with them a bit more. We've become the headline sponsor of the festival. And we were very, very excited about that and looking forward to it until, of course, this dreadful disease came along and everything changed. And so now we have, I'm glad to say, there's a great sort of virtual festival that's happening. It's not just about this evening. And if you go on to the website, which Rich, you might remind people which website it is, but if you go on to I think it's Wells Food Festival at Bigham's, .bighams.com, you'll be able to go and buy food from about 150 small artisan producers, and it's been really great being able to support those producers in this really difficult time for them. You know, lots of people have lost their routes to market, and I'm sure you've heard about that from people, William, along the way.
Yeah, and Charlie, I imagine you've probably had quite a good lockdown, have you? Because one thing we're doing is, certainly during the full lockdown, we were staying at home. And I suppose one way we could replenish our anxiety or make ourselves feel better is by eating some Charlie Bigham's meals. So has it been a good year in terms of business for you?
We've been very fortunate. We've been busy. We've been open every day. We haven't closed. And I know, sort of friends who have businesses in the restaurant sector are having an absolutely torrid time at the moment. So we are in a very fortunate position. We've been busy. And yes, people are eating our food at home. I think the other interesting thing during lockdown though, William, is that lots of people have certainly in the early stages, we're eating a little bit less food which was prepared, as ours generally is, and they were doing a lot of cooking from scratch, which actually is a great thing. And that's obviously what we're going to be doing tonight, is cooking from scratch.
Lovely. And if anyone out there has a spare quarry or disused quarry, Charlie Bigham will install a kitchen there. Now, thank you, Charlie. Wonderful to see you. Now, we are nearly ready to get started and with our first course, but we just want to explain a little bit about how the evening is going to run. There's a man next to me who can do that. Rich.
William, thank you very much indeed. And yes, just to pick up on Charlie's point there, all of the details, wellsfoodfestival.bighams.com, wellsfoodfestival.bighams.com is your one-stop shop for everything about the festival. And yes, lots of ways, William, for people to get involved this evening. Well, I say lots, I mean 3. But they're 3 pretty good ways. So firstly, if you have any questions about any aspect of the cook-along this evening, please use that Q&A feature in Zoom, which should be at the bottom of your screen. And a member of the extensive Bigham's team will rush to your aid as soon as that is possible. So if you've got any questions just about how tonight is running, please do use that. That's number 1. Number 2, if you'd like to ask any questions of any of our chefs, or if you'd just like to ask a question of William, or if you're particularly want to do of myself, or you have a particular shout out or message you'd like to share, please do share it. And lovely, look, Louise Davies, you win a gold star for being the first person here saying, do we get a break for another G&T? Louise, you're entering into this in exactly the right spot. No pun intended. So yes, please do use that Q&A feature to ask questions that we can relate to the chefs. And third, as William's already mentioned, we would love to see how you're getting on this evening. So the hashtag is supper sorted. You can use that on Instagram, you can use that on Twitter. And what we'd love you to do, please, is to take photos of the various courses this evening and share them with us, whether that has been a magnificent success or not so great a success, but it's a good effort. William, we have your word that you're not going to be the harshest critic this evening. We're going to salute everyone's efforts, regardless of possibly the outcome.
I don't have it within me. All I can ever really do is praise. Criticism comes out of me. It has to be drawn out.
Lovely. Okay, well, the virtue of doing this as a virtual cook-along is that Peter, who's sitting in the next room, has a large mute button for when William decides that he wants to deviate from that saintly pose. So please do send us your Q&A. Please do share your dishes on social, but also we are going to ask you just a few polls as we go through this evening. So our first poll, I think we'll do just now, please, so if we can launch that. So very, very brief. So how ready are you feeling for what lies ahead tonight? So your 4 options there. I was born ready. Ready as I'll ever be. Somewhat ready, but don't test me. Or the wine's open. That's me done for the evening. If you would like to vote now, please vote. If you were doing this at home, William, which of those boxes would you be ticking?
The wine's open. That's me done for the evening.
Excellent. Good. Okay, right, well, let's close that poll. We're going to do this very rapidly. Let's close that and share the results back. Let's see how we're getting on. Okay, excellent. Well, there's a nice spread there. Ready as I'll ever be, being our leading contender. To all those, that proportion of you who are saying the wine's open, that's me done. Welcome in. Welcome in. We hope you're going to have a fantastic evening. We hope you've got a nice bottle in front of you. William, talking of bottles in front of us, we're going to be talking some wine this evening as well.
We are. So quite a lot of you have made the very sensible decision to purchase some Williams House wines, williamshousewine.com. And thank you very much. I will say, though, I'm sorry, Adele, that yours didn't arrive. That courier, he will die. A friendly death, sorry. I promise you, we will send you more free wine than you can shake a stick at, Adele. I just hope you can't shake a stick at too much wine. Yes, we will taste along with some fantastic wines. There's a delicious carver coming up. Don't cringe, carvers are fantastic, especially the one that I've got for you. But it's time to head to our first chef, Rupert Wilday. Now, Rupert is the head chef for Charlie Bigham's, and he joins us now from the Charlie Bigham's kitchen. Rupert, good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can. It's very nice to see you.
Fantastic. Yeah, we're in the London kitchen. It's very quiet here. Our team have gone home, but we're going to start off with our first course.
Would you rather be in a quarry?
To be fair, the quarry is a rather more beautiful location than I am today, but I'm surrounded by a fabulous team of cameramen and sound men, so I'm well taken care of today. So I'm quite happy, and I've got a beer floating around the kitchen somewhere too, so we're okay.
Excellent. Well, listen, they're very lucky to have you at Charlie Bigham's. You spent many, many years in the industry, and now you're at the peak of your talents, and we want you to display exactly those talents. So over to you. Get cooking. First of all, just remind us, name your dish. Well, they're canapes, aren't they, really? Or
yes. Yeah, so it's more of an hors d'oeuvre. So it's going to be eaten with your knife and fork, but it's something light to get you ready for everything else. Something that will go very nicely with your pre-dinner drink, gin and tonics and white wines. They'd be perfect for it. So we're doing some very quick cured salmon with a fresh pickled pear and some toasted hazelnuts and sourdough. So the first thing we need to do is actually get our brine made. So we need some cold water. So I've got 200 milliliters of cold water. It is important that it's cold. I've pre-weighed mine. So 200 mils of cold water. Into that, you're going to put 30 grams of salt. That sounds like a lot, but it does need to be quite a heavy brine because we're going to brine the salmon very, very quickly. So 30 grams of salt and 20 grams of white sugar. So they go in there, and all you're going to do is give it a stir to start it dissolving. And every now and then just stir it because the salt may settle a bit. We're just going to put that to one side until we're ready for it. That's the brine done. First step. Nice and simple. So then we're going to move on to our pickled pear. Pear of any choice. A nice firm one, something with a bit of bite's great. And we're going to dice our pear into small chunks. So anything around sort of 3 to 5 mils is great because you want to be able to pickle this quickly in our pickling solution. So leave the skin on. Don't worry about taking the skin off. Firstly, it's delicious. Secondly, it's got loads of good nutrients. And thirdly, it's beautiful and colorful on our plate. So we're cutting it, leaving the center kind of tough bit and the core. And then we're going to cut this into approximately sort of 5 mil pieces. And it is important that we try and get all the pieces as evenly sized as we can so that when we're pickling it, they all have the same sort of texture when we're finished. We don't want some to be overly soggy and others all crispy. And we're going to be pickling it up. We're going to be using some cider vinegar. It's one of my favorites, actually. I tend to turn to cider vinegar before almost any others, particularly sort of raw organic ones. Ones where you see in the bottle, you get sort of a bit of a sludge. You can see it. I don't know if the guys can see that on the close-up. You get this kind of the sediment on the bottom. That's what I like to look for in the cider vinegars. I like it. It's fruity, but without such a harsh acidity as you get on sort of white wine vinegars. So I use it for all my salad dressings. I love it in sort of added to stir fries and things like that. So our pear is almost ready. Well, if you're lucky enough to have a pear tree, what a perfect time to be preparing pears. So the pears, we're just going to transfer those to a bowl. This is the easiest pickle recipe you'll ever come across. So into our diced pear, we're going to add around about a tablespoon of cider vinegar. Straight into the bowl. And I'm going to add some dark soft brown sugar. About half a tablespoon or so. And that's giving us a really nice balance of sort of sweet and sour. The sugar in there and the vinegar, they're also going to start drawing out all those pear juices and start softening them. Make sure that sugar is well distributed. Soft brown sugar can be rather sticky. Give that a good mix. And to that, we're also going to add a pinch of salt. But when I say a pinch, I mean a small amount. Obviously, remember we have all of that salt in the brine, which is going to be quite salty. So you don't want to over salt your pears. So there we go. We're going to mix that. And again, we're just going to set that to one side while we continue everything else. I'm just going to give my brine a little bit of a mix up. I don't know if you can see, but that has just started to settle out. So let's give it a stir it again so that salt gets dissolved. Right, we're going to serve our salmon with something a bit crunchy. So I'm going to do almonds and sourdough. I love sourdough. I love the kind of chewiness you get on it and all that flavor. So sourdough breadcrumbs. You can make it out of stale dough. It can be fresh. It doesn't really matter too much for this. You don't want them really too fine. You want to have a bit of chunk on them. Hopefully you can see mine here. We've got a bit of texture. Just give them a quick blitz in your blender so they're a bit textured. Now, if you've got some whole hazelnuts, all you want to do is give them a bash up, rustically chop them. Mine arrived and they were pre-roasted and pre-chopped. Very convenient. I think I am now a fan of those. So we're going to move over to our hob. And I'm on a medium-ish heat. Oh, I'm going to add a tiny splash of olive oil, about a teaspoon or so. I'm just going to warm this up. There we go. I'm going to add the hazelnuts to it. Mine are pre-toasted, so they won't take very long. If yours aren't, they'll take a little bit longer. You want to start toasting them in that oil till you can start smelling them. You'll start seeing them turn that lovely nutty color. So I'm going to add around about 10 grams or so of my chopped nuts. You can add more if you want, but I'm only cooking for a small crowd up here. Just make sure you move them around. You don't want them to burn, so keep them moving in your pan. There we go. And I can start smelling that nut coming up. So develop all those oils in the nuts coming out. And that's the point. I'm going to add some of my sourdough breadcrumbs. So you want to add around about 3 times as much sourdough crumb as you've got to your hazelnuts. You can start to hear it sizzling. And this is where you do need to keep it moving in your pan. And all we're doing here is we're toasting this crumb. We're letting it go a little bit crunchy, a little bit chewy, so that when you eat it with the salmon, you've got this really nice contrast of textures. So just keep moving it. It should start smelling like really lovely warm toast, almost like Sunday morning brunch. You're looking for it to go wonderfully golden brown. There we go. Hopefully you can start to see that change color. There we go. Okay, and that's about there. So once it's gone nicely brown, you can feel it's gone. You can feel it in the pan. It's got a little bit crunchy. Take it off the heat because your pan will still be hot, and it will carry on cooking. And just transfer it into something else just so it can cool off a little bit. All right. Then we're going to move back across to prepare our salmon. So it's important that you've got really nice fresh salmon. The fresher you can get it, the better, because you're going to be effectively brining this. It's sort of like almost like a sashimi. So you've got really nicely fresh salmon. Take the skin off it, so you've got none of the brown fat either. So I've got skinless salmon. And what we're trying to do here is, a bit like the pears, make sure we cut this into very even sized pieces. So in the brine solution, it brines evenly. And this is an hors d'oeuvre. It's great just to be able to eat this in one mouthful. So using a really sharp knife, just cut it nice and thinly. And you're looking to cut it into sort of 3mm pieces. Hopefully you can see that, nice and thin.
Rupert,
Yes.
I'm watching your fantastic knife skills. We've got a question from Michelle Clayton Hughes, who's popped a question in via Facebook. She is looking for a new set of kitchen knives. It's a great question. What do you recommend? Now, you probably have yours bespoke made.
It's funny you should say that. So this knife here that I'm holding is one of my favorites, and it actually came free with a pack of sausages. So, and I think that's the way I've approached my knives. The knives that I've found, I've got all sorts. I've got some lovely handmade ones, some very expensive ones, and I go to the ones that feel nice in my hand. And I think all chefs will tell you the knife ends up feeling like an extension of your body, and that's what you're looking for when you're looking for chef's knives. You can spend an awful lot of money on a chef's knife, but if it doesn't feel right in your hand, it isn't right.
So, Michelle, you just need to buy a lot more sausages.
You just got to buy some sausages and hope you get a good free knife with it. Exactly.
Thanks, fantastic. That's a great answer.
We're all for consumer advice here this evening. If you've got other culinary equipment questions,
Yes.
where the answer is going to be free with a packet of sausages, please do ask them.
Yeah. So I'm just cutting the salmon. Take your time with this. Make sure your knife's sharp into even pieces. Most supermarket salmon is good and boneless, but just be aware you may come across one which you'll need to remove. You should probably, with the salmon, be able to pull it out with your fingers if you don't have a handy set of fish pliers or tweezers. So as you can see, I'm just slicing nice and evenly. And this actually, we're serving as a little hors d'oeuvre tonight, but it makes a lovely starter or a lovely sort of summer's lunch. What we've got is the oiliness of the salmon, which will be countered really nicely by the sort of pickle of the pear. There we go. And one more. So, all right. So once you've sliced your salmon, the simplest thing in the world, just give your brine a little stir, just in case there was a little bit of salt left in it. And we're going to submerge the salmon in this salty, sugary solution. Put the pieces in individually so they get completely covered. You don't want a couple of pieces sitting by themselves. And this brine is very strong, so it's going to start curing this salmon very quickly. So you don't want to leave the salmon in there for too long. I would say up to about 3 minutes. And then you'll be good. I'll just finish this last piece of salmon off. And what's happening in there is that salmon flesh is just starting to get firmed up. It's getting beautifully seasoned from the salt and the sugar. But unlike smoked salmon, which is got that sort of obviously the smokiness and it's quite rich, this remains sort of light and fresh, almost sea-like with the salt from the brine. So last couple of bits going in there. Right. There we go. We're going to leave that for approximately 3 minutes. And what's wonderful is while you leave that, you actually have time to make yourself another gin and tonic, pour yourself a glass of wine while that sits in its brine. Your pears in the meantime, you can give them a little stir. If you can see in my bowl, they've started to develop all this lovely juice at the bottom, and that juice we're going to use as a little dressing to go with them. So once we've got all our ingredients ready, we're going to plate up our salmon beautifully on the plate, dress it with a pickled pear, make a little dressing of the juices. I'm going to serve with a few rocket leaves for a little nice peppery punch, but you could use watercress or anything else. That's not too bad. So, right. Let's get rid of my little bits of salmon. Okay, there we go. So they've had around about a minute, minute and a half in there. Up to 3 minutes is fine, but really don't go much longer than that. So I'm going to start taking them out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drain them because I want to get rid of the brine. The brine's done its job. So I'm going to take the salmon pieces out one at a time and drain them on some absorbent towel. And start them drying off. There we go. If I had a colander, it would be quicker just to tip them out. I didn't quite plan that well enough.
So, sorry, you're in the middle of a huge kitchen and you find a colander. Do we believe you?
So I'm in the middle of a huge kitchen, which unfortunately half of it got taken over by a camera crew. So I'm sure there's a colander behind a camera somewhere.
I think there's a slotted spoon to your right, or maybe that's just the light falling on.
That would be perfect. I'm carrying on this way now. I started, so I'll finish. Here we go.
It's the exactitude we admire, isn't it?
It is. It is.
I already feel sorry for our chefs, William, who not only have to produce this wonderful food in front of our eyes, but then have to put up with us
Heckling
them about sort of their kitchen equipment. So
yeah, here we go.
Our apologies, Rupert. It's looking lovely.
It's fine. I don't mind being heckled. I'm used to it. It's fine. So I'm just give them a pat dry. So here we go. Just remove the excess brine because that would be really salty. You want the salt in the seasoned fish. So there we go. So we've now got all of our ingredients ready to go. And it's a simple case now of dressing it so it looks beautiful, fresh and light. So I've got a nice white plate because that's going to really show the colors of the salmon off. And I like to place it flat so that when you get it, you get a lovely piece of delicate salmon. So again, oh, that one's stuck. It does have a habit of sticking to the kitchen towel, I warn you now. So up we come. There we go. So you could plate this up as individuals. I'm plating on one plate. I like the idea of sharing food. I like the idea of people helping themselves and taking turns and participating in the eating from the same plate. It feels more communal. I think food's a huge amount to be said about sharing food. And this is, for me, the best way to do it is to have a plate of food that goes into the middle of the table and everyone takes their own little piece. So you can see the salmon's almost translucent on that plate. And it's really, the color just pings off. Here we go. A few more pieces. One more. And I think that is about the right on that plate. So we've got our salmon looking absolutely splendid. We've got our pears. So what I like to do is just move the pears to one side of the bowl, let the juices drain a little bit to the other side so you can get dryish pear up, and just scatter them. Scatter this over your salmon. And this is about sort of adding pecans. This is, instead of having lemon on it, we're using the pickly nature of the cider vinegar, but softened by the sweetness of that sugar, lovely crunch of the pear. And if you actually smell this, this to me almost smells like autumn. It's got that wonderful autumn smell. So there we go. We've got a few of those on there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of this sort of pear liquor it's created at the bottom, and I'm going to make a little dressing. So take a bit of your pear liquor, because that has got so much flavor. And to that, I'm going to add a splash of olive oil, nice, good, fruity one. So you want about, I go about 50-50, sort of juice to vinegar, juice to oil. Give that a little mix. There we go. And we just give this a little drizzle over our plate. Some of it going on the salmon. Just like that, there we go. And then we're going to dress the plate with some of the some of the little rocket leaves, which just add that peppery bite. Like I said, watercress would also work really well. Something peppery. But again, it's just starting to ping all those colors off. Sort of the classic combination of salmon pink and bright green vegetables. There we go. But again, it should be light. This is not about filling us up. This is about getting us ready for the rest of our meal. And then we've got a little bit of this lovely hazelnut crumb. And it's going to add some crunch and a textural difference. So we're going to have some of this hazelnut crumb over our plate. And we're very nearly ready. There we go. And I'm going to add a little bit more dressing. And there we've got it, a lovely little hors d'oeuvre of quick brine salmon and pickled pears.
Well, Rupert Wilday, I think I can hear all this. I can hear a nation applauding. Absolutely wonderful. And, I just wonder how many of you at home have such professional kitchens that you might have a colander.
Lend me one, please.
Thank you very much, Rupert. Terrific. The inspiration of that dish, do you pinch it from somewhere as a dish you invented?
I invented it, so I'm going to take full credit for the invention. I think it was about thinking about the banquet tonight, thinking about the time of year, thinking about what this dish needed to do. And for me, it was about bringing something fresh, something that was going to lead nicely into the rest of the meal. So it's kind of the autumnal theme with the pears and the hazelnuts, but without being heavy or rich. So it should be fresh, something to have a drink with, something people can socialize and chat over whilst they take part in the rest of the banquet and enjoy their drink and get ready for the evening. So that's where we came from.
Rupert Wilday's cured salmon with pickled pear and warm sourdough and hazelnut crumb. Actually, that's a beautiful, wonderful recipe.
Brilliant. Let's go, Rupert. Could we just get another close up on your finished dish?
Of course you can.
If we can just
do that. Turn that. There we go.
Rupert, I think this is where you get your own back on us heckling you. That you get this gorgeous food in front of you, and we get that sort of raw aubergine.
You can have raw aubergine. Yeah.
You have stuff to drink. I wonder how you are getting on at home. What does your dish look like? Is it as professional as Rupert Wilday's? Please do share on Instagram. The hashtag is
Supper Sorted. Instagram, Twitter, either is absolutely fine. And thank you for those already starting to share. And we'll be coming to some pictures in due course.
Now, I don't know about you, Rich, but I'm feeling a little bit thirsty. But before I introduce you to the first of Williams House wines this evening, just a quick shout out that's coming from Louise Davis. She says, can you please give a shout out to the 6,500 secondary school teachers, the food teachers who have been teaching throughout lockdown, and some of them are so dedicated that they're following along tonight. Well, our first drink will be dedicated to them. Now,
I think so.
I hope that some of you at home have already cracked open a bottle or two, or that you have opened up something, a glass of white or a glass of red or whatever it is, maybe a gin and tonic.
Thank you very much.
The first wine that actually I'm going to introduce you to this evening, those of you who've bought a bottle of this, I hope you've already cracked into it. This is a Carver. Now, Carver has suffered from a bit of a bad rap over the years, mainly because there was a time when some Spanish wine producers weren't really caring about the way they made their Carver. They were doing things too quickly. And in the world of wine, you know, more haste is always a disaster, because you've got to let things ferment. You've got to let Mother Nature take its course. And great winemakers are never in a hurry. They might be in a hurry to have a drink, but they're never in a hurry to actually make a drink. Now, Carver, most of Spanish Carver is based around that part of sort of northern central Spain, Catalonia. There's about 3 different regions where you find it. And of course, it's just a sparkling wine. It can be white, it can be a rosé. But what marks it away from Prosecco is that it is much closer to Champagne, French sparkling, and a lot of English sparklings, in that it is a traditional method. Now, they can't call it method champenoise because it's not a champagne, but it is made in exactly the same way. So if you know how proper champagne is made, you'll have an inkling. So there is, of course, a fermentation in the bottle. There's a dosage added at the end. That's that very clever thing when they freeze the top of the bottle. They add a little dose of still wine, a bit of extra sugar, depending on what the particular wine needs. Now, one of the reasons why quite a lot of the carvers weren't very good is the grapes were too warm. They were lacking in acidity, as well as being made far too quickly. What is wonderful about René Barbier's Brut Reserva is that the grapes that are used for this are picked at 600 meters, so 600 meters above sea level. So much cooler, much better. Now, it's one of the reasons why English sparkling wines are doing so well recently, because of course climate change is helping. But generally speaking, we have a cooler climate. Our climate now is very similar to that of Epernay. In fact, many people are saying that the English climate is better for Champagne than the actual heart of Champagne in Epernay. But this part of Spain, where René Barbier makes his Champagne, his sparkling, his carver, I should say, is cooler. So the grapes are a bit cooler, which gives you that really important extra bit of acidity. Now, there are 3 grapes that are used to make carver. They're Spanish, they're very difficult to say. Let's not bore you with that. I just want to tell you a little bit more about the family who make it. Now, the Barbiers, another interesting thing, they're actually French. They're French immigrants. So you've got cooler climate, fantastic grapes, and French heritage going into making this Spanish sparkling. It rests on the lees, that's the sediment within the tanks, for 18 months. Now, the regulations in the Carver region are that you only have to let the wines rest on the lees for half that amount of time. So twice the minimum required of Carver. Again, more time spent by the winemaker to create a fantastic drink. Now, if you've got this one at home, I hope that you will agree, and chin chin, Rich, it's very good.
Cheers,
to
William. Cheers, everyone at home.
You agree that it's got a very clean and citrusy nose, soft fruit, bit of peach. And on the mouth, fine bubbles, very elegant, quite moussey. And I often think that if you disparage Carver and you want to challenge your friends who say it's, dismiss it as a rather nasty, cheap drink, well, it's cheaper than Champagne. This, you can get this at Williams House Wine at £13.75. But I reckon in a blind tasting, this could really mount some quite considerable attack against a Champagne. Chilled, cool, elegant. It's rich in a glass.
I don't think that's half bad, William. I think that's a lovely start to the evening. If you're drinking along with this particular bottle at home, cheers. But whatever you're drinking, from a fine bottle of Carver to whatever your particular tiffle, we hope you're having a great evening so far. William, your contention that some people look at the English climate as more suitable than Champagne. How many French men and women believe that?
Oh, well, I tell you, there's a lot of the French are now planting vineyards in the south of England. So when the French are worried about
I can't see them filming.
that are happening down in Hampshire and Kent and Sussex, when the French turn up and start buying.
Well, is it helpful for you just to watch that?
To bring their employees.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of French champagne makers that are now in places like Sussex. This year's harvest is looking incredible. I've spoken to a number of masters of wine. The Decanter World Awards, the big worldwide awards for this year, there was some serious contention from English sparkling wines. There's some very good Welsh wines as well. But the great thing is, you see that down there in Sussex, the terroir, that chalk in Sussex, is the same line of chalk that you get in Epernay. And I spoke to a wonderful man called Mark Driver, who runs the Rathfinney wine vineyard down in Sussex. And he took a soil sample of his chalk soil from Sussex over to Epernay to a geologist who tested the sample. And he said, why have you brought me local soil? And that's the extraordinary thing. So the same chalk vein that goes from Sussex to Epernay is creating very similar conditions in terms of the soil. But anecdotally, the climate change means that actually we are getting a better climate for a lot of champagnes than they're getting in France. And we're getting more sunshine. 2020, you'll know we had an amazing spring. We've had a fantastic summer. There has been a bit of rain recently. word from the vineyards, whether they're sparklings or the English Chardonnays, is actually very promising. Now, a quick reminder to all of you who've been prepping your beets, make sure that you've taken out of the oven, because they should be about ready now. And anyone, venison is still in the fridge, please take your venison out. You need to bring it up to room temperature. We never want to cook stuff, cook meat when it's too cold. Ain't that the truth, Rich?
Not
Turn your
halfway.
volume down.
We're going to go to Mark Hicks in just one moment, but before we do, just say thank you so much to everyone who's already sharing their pictures of their starter on Twitter and Instagram. That hashtag, once again, supper sorted. And thank you for doing that. And we're going to come to some pictures.
It'll be in the shot.
Should we go to Mark?
Can we go to Mark Hicks, the legend that is Mark Hicks, joining us live from Lyme Regis? We saw a glimpse of him there. He's looking incredibly handsome and ruddy. Mark, welcome.
How are we doing?
Banquet.
I'm actually in Charmouth, just down the road from Lyme Regis, but it doesn't matter where you are.
Very good to see you. You're looking fit and well. How is life down there?
Wait, I've got a beard.
It's
Because
very
I've
good.
been lumping boxes of fish and ice around. So I guess I should have been doing that a long time ago. I only started doing it 4 months ago.
Well, I think it's great you're keeping it real. Now, listen, you got a fantastic starter this evening. A woodland mushroom salad with pancetta and hazelnuts. Is this a dish that you've been cooking for years? Or is this something that you've come up with?
No, it's I wouldn't even call it a dish. It's a mixture of ingredients. So, for example, today I was on the food truck and 2 of the local foragers brought me some hedgehog fungus, some parasol mushrooms, and my friend Nick, who lives just around the corner, he cultivates his own shiitake. So, for those of you out there that are thinking, okay, we can't get that stuff unless we live in the countryside and we know someone who does, you know, don't worry. Supermarkets normally sell things like fresh shiitake and oyster mushrooms, that sort of stuff. So you can use that, that's fine. I'm just using what's around me, and I didn't have to walk into a supermarket to get it.
So tell us, how are you going to prepare it for us now? I think that would be quite handy.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm using, so your recipes will be pancetta or bacon cut up. I happen to have some of Peter Hannon's guanciale, which is cured cheek, pig's cheek. I always like to have a bit of this in my fridge, and it's perfect for salads with eggs in the morning for breakfast. So what I'm going to do is cook this first. And it's quite fatty, as will be your pancetta. So the idea really is that you use all the fat that comes out of the pancetta or whatever you're using, bacon, and you use that to cook the mushrooms in. So, you know, for this dish, it's only really 1 pan. You know, I haven't got 3 or 4 saucepans on the go because it's a simple salad. And on the subject of salads, again, I've picked all this from my garden downstairs. Some of it's wild, some of it is grown purposely, and some of it is, well, flowers. Look, nasturtiums. You know, I used to hate dishes that had flowers on them years ago. But actually, when you actually grow them in the garden, and they're actually quite tasty, you think, okay, I'll put that into a salad. I'll go back and redeem my thoughts of early life as a chef. And then for the salad dressing, again, I'm just using pretty simple ingredients. I started making my own vinegar about a year ago. So I've got, if you have a dinner party and you've got a few dregs left, I mean, I very rarely at a dinner party have much wine left to make vinegar with. So I normally take a bit from the restaurant, or people bring me vinegar, little box of wine that they haven't quite finished. So the fascination with vinegar at home, you can use red wine, white wine, whatever you want. And I started it with some of Julian Templey's cider vinegar, which is completely natural. It then forms a mother, a bit like if you make kombucha at home. Not a lot of you probably will, but it's the same thing. It looks like a piece of rubber, and that's the thing that causes the fermentation to the actual vinegar itself. So I've got the lardons, bacon, guanciale, whatever you're using at home. And that's the great thing about cooking, is you can actually adopt your ingredients.
And Mark, that vinegar in your beautiful little barrel there, will that last for ages, or have you got to worry about it? I mean, will it explode at some point if you leave it on its own for a couple of years?
William, I can't hear you very well.
I was just asking about the vinegar. Will that? What's the shelf life for that? Can you leave that vinegar on the side?
It'll last forever.
Will it explode?
Yeah, what you do is you use dregs of wine. Notice I'm using a vintage glass, William.
Private joke there, private joke.
So any dregs you do happen to have lying around, it's perfect for that. I'm really hoping my alarm doesn't go off. I'm just going to put the phone. I've got this really annoying fancy alarm system. You hear this woman's voice telling you the alarm's about to go off, and it's really loud.
Mark, Mark, while you're cooking that, just tell us quickly, because of course you've had a bit of a change in your life this year. What's it like, back there on the food truck? Do you miss the London
It's
restaurant?
quite invigorating. I mean, I think the great thing with going back to basics really is that you suddenly start appreciating small things, and and also it creates, I think this is what William wants me to ask him, it's actually created some very lovely press. Thank you, William. How did you manage to get 5 pages anyway in the Telegraph?
You've reopened though.
On a serious note, I mean, I think, you have to have this certain mindset, I think. If you go bust, bankrupt, you lose everything you've got. I think you have to stay very positive about it. And I think some people will, some people won't, but I think there's going to be a lot of casualties. And we're in a situation now that everyone's saying to me, oh, do you think we might have to close because of lockdown, blah, blah, blah. And it's, I think, just forget about it. If it happens, it happens. Okay, look, so we've got our nuts. Did I answer your question, William?
No, but that's fine. You keep cooking.
The question was...
Lyme, you have got your restaurant back there in Lyme Regis. It's reopened. How is it going? It must be wonderful.
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, it's been fully booked, like every day since the 27th of July. And I think it's quite interesting that, there's lots of people from London down here that have no intention of going back to London until early next year. So I think we're in a lucky position being in the countryside and not in London, that, we have some customers that are ready-made on our doorstep and very, very supportive. So I can see, business down here, staying fairly buoyant, really, for the next few months, hopefully, up until Christmas and beyond. Okay, so you can see a little thing going on here. What I'm going to do now is cook the mushrooms. So one of my local foragers, he brings me all sorts of things. And we've got hedgehog fungus, or pied de mouton in French. We've got parasol mushrooms. So this is how they start off in their first growth, and then they open up into a parasol. A little thing drops with a little hoop on it. It actually does look like a parasol, but these are parasols in their early stages. And these are my friend's shiitake, which he grows on logs in his garden. So I'm going to use in this salad all three. as I said, I'm only going to use one pan, and I'm going to cook the mushrooms in the same oil as the bacon. So these are the most robust ones, so they're going to go first. A bit more rapeseed oil. And I love cooking dishes that are not complex. You know, I haven't got ingredients everywhere. I've got ingredients, but they're kind of things that I've been given or picked from the garden.
Mark, should we peel our mushrooms? The big question, should you peel a mushroom?
I think if you bought it from a supermarket, don't peel it. I've never quite understood peeling mushrooms and also peeling asparagus. Why would you peel asparagus?
Well, it's a very good question. Why indeed would anyone peel an asparagus? We've also got a question, Mark, from Carol Conroy, who says, what alternative vegetarian option would give a similar flavour to pancetta? Is there such an ingredient?
It's a very good question, and I think the answer from myself is probably no, because all I'm using is the natural fat. So I would just use a bit more rapeseed oil. If you want to make butter, you can put some butter in as well, which will give you your animal fat, you know, if you're a vegetarian. Or just simply use olive oil or rapeseed oil. And as long as you look after the, you know, the cooking of the mushrooms and stuff, you'll really get the flavours in. I'm just going to season it a little bit now with some sea salt. Cornish sea salt, obviously, because we're in the countryside, in the southwest. Some pepper, and that's just going to do its own thing there. If you're using the shiitake and oyster mushrooms, the cultivated varieties, then you can probably cook them both at the same time. But
okay, Mark, I've got another question for you. It's fascinating for me, and I'm sure it's fascinating to a lot of people watching from home, seeing you working in your home kitchen. Now, tell us about the design, because I can see you've got an island there. I don't know if it's a granite top or a steel top. Tell us about the thinking behind the design of your own home kitchen. What were the important things that you factored in when you were designing it?
well, I did my kitchen in Bermondsey, my flat, and it was pretty sort of similar to this really. So that was a sort of prototype. So when I come down here, I used Fisher Paykel top, Fisher Paykel ovens, dishwashers, etc. And I sort of love that whole induction thing. I used to hate it. I didn't ever, like a lot of chefs, wouldn't ever get their head around it. So I've sort of, you know, bitten it, if you like, and taken it on the chin. And now I wouldn't do anything else apart from inductions. It's very clean. If I spill something on here, I can just wipe it up, dry it off, and it's fantastic. And I think just practical things from being, you know, a restaurant chef to a home cook, you know, you need to be able to turn around and open the bin, for example. You know, you need to be able to turn around with the pan and put it in the sink. You don't want to walk to the other end of the kitchen to put your pots and pans in the sink. So for me, there's like a sort of radius of, you know, just beyond your arms, where everything that you cook with or wash up with or whatever is at sort of arm's reach.
And where's your compost bucket?
Well, the compost is downstairs in the garden. So everything goes in there, from weeds to vegetable trimmings. I like to put the nettles in there because I make a natural nettle tea fertilizer. So you basically put rainwater and nettles from the garden. I've used a big water butt, and that forms one of the best sort of fertilizers you can get. I didn't know that until a few months ago, but I'm doing it. Stinks, I tell you. Can you imagine? Every time I turn the tap and put the jug underneath, it's like the smell is like horrendous.
Now, Mr. Hicks, are you ready to plate up?
Yes, I'm ready to plate up. Okay, we've got our vinegar. Mushrooms are finishing off. Mustard, I'm using Tewkesbury mustard, which I really like. It's like the original English mustard with a little bit of horseradish. And I think this salad is all about flavours. So we've got homemade vinegar, we've got our Tewkesbury mustard, we've got our rapeseed oil, we've got our vintage glass. Cheers, William. Audience will tell you about that later. You can write into William, and he'll give you all the answers to the questions.
Do you have many broken glasses at your own house?
No, because you've not been round to the actual house. You can come soon though. Okay, so plating up time. So we've got a lid. What I'm going to do is just put a few leaves on the plate first. And then put our mushrooms, hazelnuts and bacon on. So there's lots of flavours in the salad and it's very seasonal. And I think for mushroom lovers, you know, you can't beat a simple salad like this. It's got the crunch of the nuts and that sort of earthy flavour from the mushrooms. All those different leaves. And I'm only doing this for 2 people tonight, whereas if we were cooking for all of you, this would have been a fantastic event. And I think, you know, we've done lots of big dinners before for 300 people, 500 people. But tonight, with the current situation, this is the nearest, really, we're going to get to cooking along and having a bit of a feast.
Fantastic. Thank you. Before you go, you've really been at the forefront of putting British regional food on the map. However much hard you try and talk about it, encourage people, do you feel that you're getting some traction? Are we seriously across the country a more foodie nation than we have been in the past, or is it just chatter between people like you?
I think it was chatter, and I've suddenly discovered, you know, especially when we were all locked in and we couldn't go out, people started appreciating, you know, buying local, you know, supporting local fishermen, farmers, growers, all that sort of stuff. And I think now people actually are genuinely much more interested. And I think there's a lot of traction with chit chat at dinner parties, you know, oh, this is nice lamb, where did that come from, that sort of stuff. And I think, you know, people were very happy to talk about the ingredients on the plate with their sort of dinner guests.
Mark, that's been wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us on Bigham's Banquet.
Can we give Mark a round of applause on behalf of everyone? Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you very much. The genial, quiet, engaging genius of Mark Hicks there. Now, it's time to catch up with Charlie Bigham. Charlie?
Hello, how are you doing?
There you are. How are you getting on in your quarry? Did you watch that? Do you make your own vinegar?
Well, I'm going to just show you, first of all, that's the first, I've got one portion left, which is going to go to some of the team here who are with me of the first course, which was very delicious, I thought. Thank you, Rupert, for that. And then I've just plated up these lovely mushrooms with pancetta, and looking forward to that too. So a lot of fun. I've had one disaster so far. cooking along. I think that might be quite nice to hear about some disasters from other people. I took my eye off the hazelnuts crumb earlier on. Luckily I had a few left, but that nearly had the smoke alarm and everything going off. So that was unfortunate. But I think it'd be quite fun to see if anyone else has had a disaster as bad as mine so far, but rescued it. But what delicious food.
Isn't it just? And yeah, so if you've got a bigger disaster than Charlie Bigham, if you've done worse than burn your nuts, please do let us know. Now, we have got some questions that are just coming in. Matthew Clark says, absolutely fantastic event, that's not a question. The apron and the tea towel are great, that's not also a question. And the voucher too, but this is a big question. He says, can we donate more money? That's an incredibly good question. The answer, Rich, is yes, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Go to www.virginmoneygiving.com and search for Hackney School of Food. That's one way of giving. And another question, Rich.
Yes, indeed. And this fundraising theme, so thanks very much to the person who sent this in, who's asked us how much money has been raised for charity so far tonight. Well, over 11,000, we haven't got the currency here, but we're going to presume it's pounds. £11,000 so far already. So thank you so much, everyone who has sort of paid their admission this evening, but also a particular thanks to those who have donated more to Chefs in Schools. If you don't know about Chefs in Schools, if this is the first time you've heard of them, we do encourage you to have a look at their fantastic work. And we've also got birthday shout-outs, William. Our first birthday shout-out of the night.
Yes, it comes from Rosie Winter. A shout-out to her parents, Patrick and Annie, cooking with her friends. She's isolating with suspected COVID. I'm sorry to hear about that.
Rosie, our sympathies. And Katie Harrison, thank you for joining, Katie. Shout out, happy birthday, 40th birthday to Rob. This is his party. Well, Rob, I don't know if you were planning to invite 600 guests around for dinner for your party, but it seems like that is what has happened. So happy birthday to you, Rob.
And another question from me. Rich, should we have a glass of wine?
That sounds like a very good question.
Those of you who have been drinking along with William's House Wines, I hope you've already poured yourself a glass of Guy Allianz Sauvignon Blanc. This is one of my favourite Sauvignon Blancs that I've tasted this year. It's Domaine du Haut. It's from the Loire Valley. It's made by a father and son, Guy and Cedric. They farm their vineyards on clay and limestone and some flinty clay soil, which is very good terroir, very good soil for a good Cabernet, for a good Sauvignon Blanc. I felt that this had just enough body and bite to go against that vinegar that Mark Hicks creates at home, but is not too overpowering, because often mushrooms can have quite a subtle flavour. So I think this is a wonderful accompaniment. It's a sort of warm, enveloping kiss of a white wine. And although I'm a mad fanatic when it comes to Chardonnay, occasionally I do like a Sauvignon Blanc, but it needs to be crisp, dry, and generous enough for me to really, really love it. And this is a Sauvignon Blanc that sits on the lees, on the sediment, for several months, and it's got very fresh and a grassy nose. The key thing about this one is the acidity, that long and elegant finish. A little bit of apple on the mouth. £13.50 at williamshousewines.com. Not too bad. What do you reckon, Rich?
I feel like I just need to provide a contrast to your eloquence, William, and say, yeah, I'll drink that.
You'll drink that. It's a beautiful bottle. I love the fact. I love families who work together. Guy and Cedric, father and son, making my current favourite Sauvignon Blanc.
That is genuinely a very lovely bottle of wine. If you're at home and you're enjoying the cooking, you're looking forward to the chefs coming up, but you want a bit more entertainment, well, there's probably a drinking game here you can play whenever William mentions his wine shop. It's a game I probably wouldn't encourage you to play because you may end the night rather worse for wear. William, that's a lovely glass.
Thank you very much. Now, have people been getting in touch with us on social media, Rich?
They have indeed. Well, firstly, we've had a couple of questions just asking for us to repeat that hashtag. So the hashtag is supper sorted. Supper sorted. And if you want to use that on Twitter or on Instagram, please do. And we'll go to some pictures in a moment. But just to say, Penny Nicholas, been in touch on Twitter to say, cooking along with the Charlie Bigham chefs this evening, fab event, but only managed the salmon nibbles so far and already exhausted. Penny, there's probably others in your position, but we hope you're keeping up okay. Thanks for getting in touch. Shall I just remind people how they can send through their content?
That would, because we want to see your pictures. We want to see whether you have triumphed in the disaster zone that Charlie Bigham is in down there in the quarry, or have you produced something that you think is even more beautiful than the chefs? Did you, like Mark Hicks, layer your salad on top of the mushrooms rather than, do you notice Charlie Bigham had the mushrooms on one side of the plate, the lettuce on the other? That really tells you about his ordered mind. In contrast to that sort of mad creativity of Mark Hicks, everything sort of piling up, looking like a wonderful enveloping forest of food. We really would love to see how your cooking is going on this evening.
Let's have a look. Can we see some pictures of what people have been sharing so far, please? I'll pop up on your screens in just one moment. Again, that hashtag is supper sorted. Lovely. Well, that's looking pretty good. Louise and Claire, thank you so much. I managed to get 3 plates out of that. Lovely. Thank you. Let's go to our next one. Oh, this is going to get difficult for us here, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, come on, square plate. We'll have to forgive the square plate on this occasion, the fact that the person seemed to be standing upside down, but it did look very good, that salmon dish. Look at those beets, look at that salmon. Or the autumnal colours of the pear, the hazelnuts, and who's that? I can't see it from here.
Lovely, thank you very much. It's lovely to see people wearing their Charlie Bigham's aprons as well.
Yes.
I hope you're enjoying those. So thank you, all those who've already shared. We're going to come to more pictures later on. So just a quick recap about those different ways to get involved. If you've got questions just about how this is all supposed to fit together and what you're supposed to do when, please use that Q&A feature on Zoom, and one of the team will rush to your aid as soon as they're able. If you have questions for the chefs, or indeed for William or myself, again, use that Q&A feature, and we'll come to those. And we do welcome any shout outs, or just if you want to tell us where you're doing this, who you're doing it with, please do. You can use that Q&A feature, and that will come to us, and we can communicate from this side. But we really do want to see pictures of your plates using that hashtag supper sorted on Instagram, on Twitter, and we will come to further pictures later. And a point which I didn't mention earlier, we've asked all of our chefs this evening if they wouldn't mind actually going on to Instagram and Twitter later tonight, just to give their verdict on your creations. So if you would like our chefs to come and give their view on how you're getting on, please do use Instagram, use Twitter, supper sorted, and they will be in touch. William, shall we have another poll?
I love a poll, please. Rich, can we have another poll?
Let's have another poll.
A live poll.
A live
The results will be in the moment
how
voted. How
is it going so far? So your 4 options. So is it piece of cake? Is this all too easy for you? Are you just about on track, you think? You might not have done everything, or you're wondering whether it started yet. So those are your 4 options. We'll give you another, we're going fast, we'll give you another 7 seconds to answer that poll. Again, William, if you were sitting at home in your kitchen, where do you think you'd be on that scale?
I think definitely has it started yet.
Okay, well you've voted
and then,
why.
Whoops.
Okay, well that's the 5th option, which we didn't include. Lovely, let's close that poll and share the results, please. Let's see how people are getting on. Right, well, that's pretty good. William, I think so we have got there a large number of people who think they're broadly on track.
Very
I
good.
think that is excellent. Only a small amount of you wondering whether it's started yet. For those of you who are thinking it's a piece of cake, congratulations, well done. And if you are thinking that, we very much do hope that you have shared your pictures, supper sorted, so that we can see those.
And let us know, how many of you dehydrated your apples? How many of you cheated and just used fresh ones? I mean, all may be revealed in your own home kitchens at the end of tonight when Merlin LeBron Johnson shows us how to do it. But I'm wondering whether a lot of you actually did start at 10 o'clock this morning, which of course would be extremely impressive.
Lovely. So thank you, everyone. And I think that's really encouraging. So we're a couple of courses down. We've got lots more to come, but great to know that people, so 62% feeling on track. So that's excellent. We've got a couple of minutes before we go to our next course. William, should we check back in on Charlie?
I think it would be very good. Charlie Bigham, are you there? Have you had any more kitchen disasters? And let me just ask you, Charlie, your tipple, we're talking a lot about wine this evening.
Yes.
We talk about, you know, one's rack red or the fridge white. What is the fridge white on a Tuesday night, let's say, in the house of Charlie Bigham?
Well, I must say I do like, I mean, a sort of lovely white burgundy. I'm not going to be able to give you a particular one. You could probably come back at me straight away with the one I should be drinking, William. What should I be drinking if I like a white burgundy?
There's something you should be drinking. I mean, obviously, white burgundy is a Chardonnay. Burgundy is that wonderful part of the, you know, that wonderful French region where miraculously there are only two grapes. There's only Pinot Noir for red. There's only Chardonnay for white. If anyone ever says they don't like Chardonnay, but they like a glass of white burgundy, they don't know what they're talking about. So you like a posh Chardonnay from the Burgundy region. There are so many to choose from. I'd hate to nudge you into a corner, Charlie. What is your red rack? What's your midweek red that you would go for?
I definitely have a penchant for Rioja. I would say that's my go-to, you know, kind of just everyday red. Okay. And there are obviously many to choose from.
There are many, of course. We're going to talk about Rioja in due course. So I've got Prunillo. It's another amazing region of the wine world. And of course, Rioja is a region, not a grape. One often sort of says Rioja, and it's a bit like saying, have you got a white burgundy? It's a tricky scenario. Any more disasters, Charlie, from you since we last spoke? Have you
on the cooking? No, remarkably not yet. But you know, lots of delicious food so far.
Are you getting inspiration for new ranges of your meals?
Well, I'm definitely getting inspiration for food I'm going to cook at home, and who knows how that might translate into dishes we make you know, at work as well.
When you began your business all those years ago, of course, you spent quite a lot of time out and you traveled around the world and Europe and I think you know, North Africa, tasting and so on. Do you still have time to get in the caravan or get in the little camper van and travel around to get inspiration, or are you chained to your desk these days and sending out your kid or other members of your team?
No, I mean, I'm very lucky. Sadly, we no longer have our camper van, which is, you know, Claire and I, my wife, we went off in more than 25 years ago now. So we don't do it that way, but we're very fortunate in that, you know, I love traveling. I love eating food from around the world. And so I do manage to get away quite a lot. Sadly, obviously not in recent months.
And
you know, I think it's one of...
You managed to taste all the dishes that your chefs concoct. And I wonder, are there dishes that you created in your kitchen that you thought would be sensationally successful that didn't work actually once they reached the shelves of the supermarket? And similarly, are there dishes that you were a bit funny about that ended up being, you know,
if you go like if I need to come towards you, I'm just going to push.
Well, Henry Harris has popped up already, but we're going to come back to it. Did you get my question there?
I think I did, yes. And yes, many dishes we have made which are delicious or have been delicious when we've made them. We thought surely people are going to lap these up and buy them, you know, every week, and then they've been an absolute disaster from a sales point of view. And I think what I've learned, one of the things I've learned over the years is actually what we concentrate a lot of effort on is just cooking dishes that people are reasonably familiar with and know they like, and then just trying to do the very, very, very best version of those, rather than be sort of esoteric. Sorry?
Like mashed potato. Is there a moral justification to do mashed potato?
Well, we don't sell mashed potato on its own, and we sell mashed potato as part of our fish pie, but then a fish pie would be very incomplete without mashed potato, William, surely.
I think you'll also find you do a mashed potato with your boeuf bourguignon.
Actually, we do, with a boeuf bourguignon, we do a dauphinoise.
Okay. Well, look, good for you. Now, listen, it is that time of the evening when we are very excited to go to one of our other great chefs. This is a man I first came across him many years ago when he was plying his trade at a restaurant in South Kensington called Racine. I remember Terence Conran used to say, favourite French bistro. He's gone on to do all sorts of other things, from consulting for the Soho House Group, and now he is the man who bestrides, with various other partners, a fantastic group of pubs right across London. He's a man that I often think can cook better food than many French people. He is, of course, Henry Harris. Henry, welcome to Bigham's Banquet.
Thank you, William. Lovely to see you.
Now, where are you?
I'm actually in Charlie's kitchen, as I had a few logistical issues at home, and so Charlie's made me welcome. This was an open bottle of Rioja ready for me, which I've drunk, and I've got everything to hand and ready to go. Very excited to be here.
You're in Charlie Bigham's kitchen. Is there any other members of his family in the house? Could you have a little root around?
No, I've been through all the rooms, I've been through all the drawers. There's really nothing scandalous to report anywhere at all, unfortunately, I'm hoping. No, it's just me, and I've brought Denise, my wife, as camera lady, so she's behind the camera, and I'm ready to do a bit of cooking.
Good evening, Denise. It's fantastic you're there. She, of course, is a fantastic purveyor of some of the world's most wonderful drinks. Denise, is she still selling the poire, the Vieille Prune, I should say?
The Vieille Prune, yes, she is. The aged plum brandy, exactly. So a good way of finishing later this evening. In fact, I will have one later, definitely.
Now, Henry, the floor is yours. You are going to cook our fish course, smoked haddock, spinach and parmesan gratin. Take us through this fantastic dish, and then I'm going to suggest a cheeky wine.
Brilliant. So it's a very simple dish, and it's one that kind of started off as a kind of a winter dinner for two. And then it worked out rather nicely in smaller portions as a nice little fish course. So I've got a pan with some butter in, and I've got some baby spinach, which I'm just going to drop in to the pan with a little seasoning of salt, very little because there's the smoked haddock going in there, which is, or a smoked haddock I'm using later rather, some pepper, and then I'm going to give that just a little stir around. And you need to cook the spinach first, so that, because it gives out some liquid, and you need to make sure that you can extract all of that. So it's just quietly sitting there. And then during that moment, you have to decide the dishes you're going to serve it in. I'm serving it for two this evening for Denise and I, so I bought two little nice kind of enamelled mini pie dishes. The other ingredients are very straightforward. I've got some smoked haddock, fillets without the skin. I've got creme fraiche, and I've got some parmesan. Now, one of the things that is key about this recipe is making sure that you use the right creme fraiche. I will come back to that in a second. The spinach is, I hope you can see, cooked, and I'm going to just run over to the sink, drop that into a colander, and then press the excess liquid out. Press some with the back of a spoon. And then bring it over. I've got my gratin dishes. And I put the spinach at the bottom. Now, the one thing about this is it really doesn't matter what you put it in. You just need a pan that is kind of serving dishes that are either small enough. You can do it in ramekins. You could do it, I've got here, if you wanted a slightly more romantic dinner, you could do a sharing dish for two. Or if you could do it as a main course for a family by doubling the portions to the recipe. And putting it in a nice big baking dish. So I've got the spinach there. I'm then taking some smoked haddock, and all you need to do is make sure that you have got no bones, and this is tail piece, so there's never any bones there. Put the smoked haddock in. Nicely. And then the creme fraiche. Now, as someone who loves French cooking, butter and cream have always formed an important part of the kind of my repertoire. But what I would say is it's using it occasionally rather than all the time. Otherwise, we'd all be kind of rather kind of large and slightly overly healthy, or rather underly healthy people. But going back to the creme fraiche I mentioned earlier, creme fraiche it's not sour cream. It's a natural, it's kind of using a culture, it's a naturally soured cream. So it goes a bit like kind of like a thick spoonable double cream. And if you see the word French on the label, or Isigny or Normandy, areas where it comes from in northern France, you know that you're getting a natural product. There are in some supermarkets, English supermarkets, you'll see creme fraiche, and when you look at the label, it says it's made in England, and it invariably tends to be not naturally soured, so that when you cook with it, it kind of splits and goes grainy. So it is just worth kind of looking for, you can see, just a nice, thick, buttery cream. If you can't get good French creme fraiche, you would be better off using double cream. And you put a nice tablespoonful on top of each one and spread that out. And ditch the spoon chip. I then take a few drops of Tabasco. It just gives it a nice warmth, and there's an acidity to Tabasco that kind of balances it out as well. A milling of black pepper. And then taking the parmesan, just grating a generous amount on top. Slightly kind of, you look at it and you go, that's too much, but with a good grater, it's always going to, there's lots of air in there. And it's the balance of kind of earthy and sharp aged Parmesan cheese contrasts nicely with the creme fraiche, and also stands up against the smoked haddock, which is quite a assertive flavour. And that, to this point, is ready to go. And if you were cooking this and you were entertaining, you could do this in the morning and having it ready to go and just leave it in the fridge to one side. All we need to do now is I've preheated the grill and put them under the grill, and that's where it takes 5 to 10 minutes. If you cut the smoked haddock thinly and layer it on the spinach, it will take much less time to cook. And I will kind of keep an eye on that as we move forward and talk a bit now. I've got to watch the smoke alarm up here, just to make sure that I don't kind of set all the bells ringing. And that, at that stage, it is incredibly simple. And but the flavors, that balance of, warm, crusty cheese, sharp, comforting cream, and good smoky French haddock, good smoky, comforting smoked haddock, rather, not French haddock at all. In fact, I found that it is worth looking for, really good smoked haddock Grimsby, probably, I think I found has some of the best smoked haddock I've come across in the British Isles. And you know, there we are. I'm going to have a quick look down here, slightly off camera, to see how it's going. And it is already kind of bubbling and making, you know, I can smell it. It's a shame you can't.
Henry, I can just about smell it. I can very much sense it. Where did your love of French cooking come from? Did you spend your youth in France, in kitchens in France, or were you a young boy who hoovered up the cookbooks of people like Elizabeth David?
Well, it was more, I have to thank my mother and father, who had just a passionate love of French food and cooking. Holidays in France. Mum collected all of Elizabeth David books, Jane Grigson, Robert Carrier, and was in the late 60s and through the 70s was a serial dinner party hostess, and would cook from those books, and we would sit at the table, and often whilst eating one meal it would be about planning the next one. I was fairly chunky as a young boy as a result of it. I was far too well fed, and it just stuck with me. And then I was, when I started cooking when I was 20, 21, I was lucky enough to meet Simon Hopkinson and work for him for 8 years, and he had a passion, or rather, French cooking is probably the heart of everything that he loves about good food, and that kind of endorsed my childhood and cemented it, so that as I progressed as a chef and a cook over the years, it was when I found myself in 2002 about to open my own restaurant, I thought, I just want to cook French food, and I set myself those kind of parameters. And
Henry, I remember, sorry to interrupt you, many years ago, I used to come into your restaurant, Racine, seeing Terence Conran there, and obviously he's been an important part of your life, an important part of your brother Matthew's life, because of course he worked at Bigham for many years. The great man died a few months ago. What are your memories specifically of Terence Conran? How important?
I remember the two things that I remember was that, when Bigham opened, which he was, he designed the whole restaurant and the whole kind of Michelin Michelin tires and everything about it, and food and gastronomy, was that, it was the days of smoking, and Terence was a lover of good big cigars, and he'd had, a good dinner, and he came into the kitchen to talk to Simon, and hadn't bothered to put his cigar down. And of course, smoking is forbidden in kitchens. But that didn't worry Terence, and he stood there on the pass talking to Simon, puffing away. And I thought, how lovely to be able to stand in your own restaurant, smoking a good cigar, talking about good food. And then the memory I treasure most of all was that when he came to my restaurant, Racine, I was talking to him afterwards, and he said how lovely it all was and how much he enjoyed it. And he said, this is the restaurant that every provincial French market town should have on the town square, but sadly rarely does anymore. And I thought, as an endorsement of what I do professionally and what I enjoy doing as a cook, I thought, it's that no one really has said anything better.
Yes, and I know it's been a funny year, but how has it been now running a small group of pubs? Is that a huge transformation in your life, or more of a kind of natural development? Because of course, Racine is what you're most famous for, one single bistro in South Ken. How you manifest yourself over your small empire. Are you still cooking, or are you popping from one place to the other?
I've got younger, fitter, and very able cooks in all of the kitchens, and I go in and I get in their way, and we cook together, and we talk about food together, and I think it creates good menus, and we get great feedback. How has it changed? It's not taking the last 6 months into account, but over the last couple of years, the way people eat out has changed. And public houses are great environments for eating out in. You can go, they're like the neighborhood bistro brasserie in French towns. There's a bar where you can sit and drink, where there is no obligation to eat. but good smells and good food being carried past you tempts you into staying and eating. And we also have people coming in, you know, they're pubs with dining rooms, and you know, people book and eat in the dining rooms. And I'm very proud of it.
Good stuff. Now listen, you're a man who can inspire someone who's going through a tricky time. We've got a question here that Henry Harris, I want you to answer from Durston. First of all, she said, this is great. So she's really enjoying it. She says, can I ask this as a question? I lost my sense of smell about 12 years ago, and it takes some of the pleasure out of cooking and enjoying food. How can I get myself interested back in the kitchen without actually being able to smell what I'm cooking? She wants to reignite her passion for cooking. Maybe this could be a relevant question actually for people who have lost their sense of taste and smell from COVID. Any clues how she can get the passion back, despite the fact
I don't know how I would cope with that. I mean, I really feel for her on that. I would say that it's embracing the technical aspect of cooking, which leads one more towards baking and leads one more towards pastry work. Because when you're working on the kind of the sweet part of a menu, making good puddings and baking good cakes, it's all about precision. And you can see the results of the technical processes that you're doing. So I would think that, you know, focusing on puddings would be the best direction to go in. It's the one I would go in.
So puddings and cakes. And I suppose also what I would say to Nikki is seeing the enjoyment in others as they enjoy the fruits of your labor.
Exactly.
From
Absolutely.
Isn't that what entertaining and cooking is about? It's seeing the satisfaction and happiness in other people. Because you as a chef, of course, bringing happiness, you see it in your customers' faces, and you know, to see that in your friends' faces and in their hearts. That's so key.
Definitely. And it goes back to puddings again, because with cakes and working on the presentation of it, you can really do some fantastic over-the-top presentations and, you know, bring an ornateness to the dishes that you're serving that really do kind of bring a wow factor to a meal. And so, yes, I think working on that. Now, I'm going to bring out the smoked haddock gratins now, and I hope
just as you do that,
can be seen.
Henry, quite a lot of people didn't, if you can hear me, Henry, quite a lot of people didn't have their grill on. That's our fault for not warning them. It's my fault. It's Rich's fault, actually. It's your fault.
Thank you very much, William. Thank you.
It's your fault.
Rich, I leave.
It's Rich's fault. I'm sorry if you're at home. Rich didn't get your grill on.
My apologies.
This is taking long to cook. That's fine. You're forgiven because Rich is taking on the chin. Henry, just remind us how long you need to cook it for.
But that was 10 minutes under the grill, and you know, grills do vary a little bit, but the guide is to looking at it. Don't put it right at the top of the grill. Put it kind of further down so that, you know, if you know how if you use your grill, you'll know where to put it, so that if it's there for 8 to 10 minutes so that the fish cooks through, it doesn't burn. And you can see that the cheese there, it looked like I got a lot. You could almost have put more in there. And if I grab a spoon, I have a spoon, here we are. And then hopefully, you know, the smoked haddock has cooked through beautifully. You've got this amazing sauce. The only thing that and just check the seasoning. Oh, that's pretty good. Delicious. I'm just going to wander off camera and finish this now. The only thing I would suggest that you would probably add to this is a good crusty, you know, French baguette.
And there might be something else, Henry, that you might add to it. Now, because I'm going to suggest a wine in a second. I don't know if you know what I'm going to suggest, but you are a man who has a serious cellar, a wife who has a serious commercial wine operation. Your dad, of course, was a supplier of drinks. What's your, you know, perfect wine to match this smoked haddock gratin? What would you match your fish course with in terms of wine?
I would either go for a kind of something from Alsace, like a Riesling. You've got fruit and acidity to it. over the last few months, I've been exploring Italy a lot, as I've always felt that it was a big gap in my wine knowledge, and being stuck at home for 6 months was a good opportunity to do some research. And a nice kind of Soave would be kind of just have a nice mineral content to it, acidity to it, and strength. You don't want anything too light and thin. A Viognier would work very well, or just a kind of nice sun-baked white wine from Provence or southern Spain. An Albarino would be lovely, because you've got smokiness, you've got creaminess. You need to, a nice contrast and balance at the same time.
Did Henry Harris say Riesling? Did Henry Harris
did say Riesling.
Guess what I'm guessing? I'll talk about that in a little while. Well, this gratin, is this one of the dishes that you could make a couple of days in advance, put it in the fridge and then reheat it? Or have you got
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I mean, it really does take minutes. If you don't put the spinach underneath it, then you could literally make it while the grill is heating up. And the Harris family standby supper is the smoked haddock with the creme fraiche and horseradish, as I did, and then a large bowl of garden hot buttered peas.
Yes. Now, one of the wonderful things about watching you and people like Mark Hicks cook, you give off this air of genial calm. Are you like that in the kitchen, or are you a hard taskmaster, Henry? And be truthful. Are you? I
always try and keep calm, but sometimes when the pressure intensifies to a certain level, I have been known to forget my manners with those around me, and occasionally the language becomes a little more florid, blue, as my mother would say. But I try to avoid it, because good food and good cooking comes from a good environment. And I think happy cooks cook far happier food than scared or unsettled cooks.
Okay. So thankfully, on tonight's Bigham's Banquet, we haven't seen Henry Harris go through his blue period.
We still have time, but we're hoping, and
yes.
You're looking very calm, so we're hoping it doesn't go to that.
Now, Henry, just give us the heads up. Someone like you, are your businesses doing okay? Are there new plans in the pipeline? Have you got more pubs lining up to open, if you can, when this crisis tends to,
We've got 3 of the pubs open at the moment, and we're doing everything we can to build those up, give strength to it, and hope that we aren't dealt too many kind of hands of adversity over the next couple of weeks that make it more challenging than it should be.
And the punters are coming through the door.
They are, and saying very nice things.
Are you getting out and about to restaurants? And if so, where are you dining? Where are you taking Denise Harris?
Denise, at the moment, Soho has been a focus. The dining room upstairs at the French House, where the lovely Neil Borthwick cooks beautiful French food. And Noble Rot have just opened a restaurant in Soho on the side of the Gay Hussar. That's lovely. I've also, head west to, I live in West London, head west to Ealing, to my favourite pizzeria, Santa Maria. And for just a classic, can't remember what you call them, cheese and tomato pizza. Margarita, that's the word.
Well, that's some good tips there. 2 restaurants on Dean Street in Soho. Upstairs at the French House, Angela Hartness, other half cooking there, Neil, and Noble Rot in Soho, where I was actually this very week. Now, Henry, we're going to leave you for a second, because we're going to swing back to the man himself, the man who puts his name on meals. It's Charlie Bigham. Charlie, how are you getting on in your quarry kitchen?
Nice to see you again, William. I'm just sort of, I don't know, can you see that there? This is this delicious gratin. I feel I'm actually eating for you tonight, William. You're there with just some, with nothing more to eat by the looks of it than some, raw vegetables. while I'm tucking into a delicious banquet. And so I thought it would be good maybe to just have a mouthful for you right now. I've got some bread as recommended by Henry. Doesn't this look delicious? I'm gonna take a mouthful, and then obviously I'm not going to be able to talk for a moment.
I hope he burns his mouth with that.
Spoons under there.
Oh, it's sensational, Henry. Absolutely delicious. William, you are missing out big time.
Someone has to hold it all together and not stuff their face. Now, thank you very much. Good to see Charlie Bigham there. Henry Harris, I have a question for you from Alexandra Broson's Doy. This is a rather crucial question, so you better be quick. How long do we put it in the oven if we don't have a grill? Be quick, because time is against us, and she needs to gratin.
If you preheat your oven, if it's a fan-assisted oven, you preheat it to 180 degrees to, I would think, about 10 to 15 minutes. Basically, from cold to when it's bubbling and crusted, it's going to be cooked through. If it's not, stick it back in for another couple of minutes.
And Anne Ellis, Henry, needs to have her dish rescued because she reckons she's topped Charlie's error of burning his hazelnut. She forgot to put the cream in the haddock dish. Is it too late? Can she put it?
You know what I would do? You've got some cheese there. I would put some cream on top and then put a bit more cheese on top and just make it cheesy.
There you are. So literally, that's no problem. Pour the cream on, grate some cheese, whack it back under the grill or the oven.
Yeah, exactly.
Cheesy and delicious. Very similar to Rich, really.
Thank you, William. I must say, I don't know if you've got Charlie there as well. So how do you rate Charlie's kitchen? Henry, sort of a scale of 1 to 10?
It's fantastic. It's, you know, Charlie's not in London. I've got the keys, and I think I've called the family. They're moving in. I'm having the locks changed in the next half hour.
And Charlie, does that mural change throughout the seasons? What is that view?
It's actually a view of somewhere where I spend a lot of my holiday time on the west coast of Ireland. It's a very, very lovely place. It's not quite as sunny as in that picture in Ireland every day, but it is every day. It's an extremely beautiful place where I love spending time.
So you stare at that view every single day in your London kitchen. When you get to Ireland, you must think, I've seen this.
It's on the Atlantic, so it changes about every 5 minutes.
Okay. Very good indeed. Right now,
Charlie, you were asking earlier about people to share their disasters, and we have had a couple coming through. I do think, Daisy, thank you for joining, Daisy. I think you might be winning so far. Daisy's dog has eaten all of the venison. So, Charlie, do you think that's your burnt nuts?
Yeah, I think that trumps my burnt nuts.
There's a question from Pam Howarth. Can you give the name of the Sauvignon Blanc again? Yes, I can. It's Terrain Sauvignon Blanc from Guy Allion. The easiest thing to do is to go to williamshousewines.com and you'll see it there. It blazed in all its glory and just begging for you to purchase it.
And if you're playing the drinking game at home, it's time to drink. As William mentions his wine shop again. Thank you. William, thank you very much. We've got lots of shout-outs going through. Thank you, everyone, for sharing these. Shout-out for Finn and Louise Doyle. It's their birthday yesterday. Happy birthday. To the Hickman family, who are loving it. An amazing night in. Matthew Swan, celebrating his son's bar mitzvah today. We can certainly say hello.
We'll say hello, Matthew. Very nice to see you. Matthew Swan, it's his bar mitzvah. Fantastic. Many congratulations.
Lovely. Thank you very much. A question there from Terence for Henry.
Yes, this is Terence Wood. This is not Terence Conrad from Beyond the Grave. Henry, if you can hear me, is there any reason for using dyed haddock as we bought undyed haddock? A bit late because I'm sure it's in the gratin already, but is that okay? Is Terence Wood all right with their undyed?
Yeah, it's fine. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, you can. I actually tried to buy undyed haddock, but they'd sold out. It was a Saturday lunchtime, and undyed is better. I'm going to prefer that because it's more natural, but either works well.
Okay, and then Stephen O'Brien, Henry, while we're on the subject of haddock, should the haddock have been cooked before grilling, or are you putting it under the grill in the gratin raw?
I'm putting it in raw, otherwise it just overcooks. And also the juices that come out of the haddock kind of go into the cream, and it gives just a more aromatic and well-balanced sauce.
Fantastic. Well, look, Henry, thank you so much. It's been
Pleasure,
to share the banquet with you, to see you in your brand new kitchen. Congratulations. And I expect that, you know, if you haven't taken possession of it, maybe Charlie Bigham has got himself one of Britain's finest private chefs. Henry Harris, thank you very much for coming on the show with us. And it's wonderful to see you again. Now, Henry, of course, very wisely mentioned that he thought that a Riesling would go pretty well with his dish. And I have to say, I completely agree. Rich, I hope that you agree as well.
Let's have a look.
This is a Riesling from, well, Riesling is made all over the world, but the area most famous for Riesling, it's like Alsace, is the Rhine in Germany. And this is where this comes from. Now, for all the reasons that Henry said, I think that this wine is robust, has a certain sweetness, not too sweet, though that's the key thing about why I love this Riesling, to be to be a competitor for flavour against the haddock. In fact, I think to be a really beautiful guest on that dish in terms of pairing it. Riesling, it's a wonderful grape. Traditionally, a lot of Rieslings, of course, were made for sweet wines. The ones that I like are the dry Rieslings, the Rieslings with wonderful acidity. One of the reasons why Riesling is such an extraordinary grape, it's not like many grapes, it needs a cool climate. It thrives in a cool climate. If you try and plant Riesling in Spain or some parts of warm Victoria or in Australia, it'll be a complete disaster. But when it's dry, it's absolutely magnificent. And also, I like it because it's not too alcoholic. Sometimes I think you can get too much bang for your buck when it comes to booze. This Riesling is just 9% alc ABV, and I think that's just about right. If you have a smell of it, well, I think you'll agree that the dryness is wonderful. Quick word on the name. It's called, there it is, you can see it in shot now. It's called White Rabbit. Why is it called White Rabbit? Well, it's because what White Rabbit's like, a Riesling likes as well. It likes a bit of blossom, it likes grass, it likes fresh air. And both thrive on that. So this is a wine made by the family who make it. And it's bottled early. It's bottled early to really preserve its freshness. And the one thing I love about this is I think it's great with or without food. People often don't suggest a Riesling as an aperitif. They might think more of a Chardonnay or a Cabernet Sauvignon. But if it's dry enough, if it's smooth enough, if it's got enough acidity, I think this is a fantastic way to start an evening as your first drink. You know, that wonderful moment, 6, 7 in the evening, I don't know, noon maybe, that first drink of the day, it's got to be a cracking drink. And for me, it's always white wine or gin and tonic. I don't drink much red in the evening, but I think for that first palate cleansing drink, I think a Riesling's good. And I think this one is very good because it's so refreshing. It's got grass on the nose, a bit of white blossom. And when you sip it, there's a very refreshing, tiny hint, I reckon, of tropical fruit. It's a perfect balance. Perfectly priced, $12.95 at Williams House Wines.
William, that's something you've asked a couple of chefs, William, about their inspiration, where their dishes came from. What's your inspiration behind some of the wines we're drinking this evening? So, of all of the different bottles you could have brought along, how did this one end up catching your fancy?
I taste a lot of wines. Each month, I taste several cases in order to be able to find what I reckon the perfect 8. That's 2 fizzes, 2 roses, 2 whites and 2 reds. If I reckon I've got a lot of white and I'd like to sell one more white, and I think the evenings are coming in and I don't want to list a rosé, I might take a rosé off the list, although I do quite like to have a rosé available all year round, because particularly if it's a lovely Provençal rosé and it can really bring back the memory of summer. I've chosen wines tonight because I think they really suit the dishes, and also wines that have got a good contrast. And also wines that I think have a lovely story. I think it's great fun if you're at home and actually you can crack open a glass and talk about the contents of the grape, but without boring everyone too much. I hope you agree with me. So, and I think it's wonderful to have a cava rather than maybe an English sparkling, certainly cheaper than most English sparklings, a cava rather than a Prosecco. I think it's lovely to think about a Riesling, not as a sweeter Riesling that you might drink with a curry, or perhaps even a pud, or let's say a Riesling that would, that would go with fish or something. So, all sorts of reasons, really. I think I just love to share the wines that I love and the ones that I've just, got great inspiration from and I think are tasty and I think are a good price. I think when it comes to price, it's a very interesting subject, this, Rich, because unless you spend about £7 on a bottle, you're not actually buying wine. You're spending money on the production, on the glass, on transport, on tax. All those things make up a hefty proportion, percentage of actually what makes up the cost of a bottle. And it's until, Rich, you start spending £7 really, before you actually start spending money on juice. So go up £5, £6 or £7 from that, and you really start investing in juice without getting into a more sort of crazy zone. Now you might say, but I can buy a wonderful wine for £4 or £5 in the supermarket. Ladies and gentlemen, they're bribes. They're trying to get you in as loss leaders so that you spend money on other stuff. There are, of course, wonderful supermarket wines. And surprisingly, some of the discount stores like Lidl will drag you in because from time to time they have a wonderful white Burgundies. But generally speaking, if you can spend £7, above £7 on a wine, then I think you will find that you're starting to get bang for your buck. So most of my wines are between about 10, 12, 13 pounds. And this Riesling, I think that's pretty bang on, about £12.95.
I think that's again, I would agree. That's all right.
It's all right. Rich says it's all right.
That's the seal of approval for me. But we'd love to know what you're drinking along with us, wherever you are. That alcoholic, non-alcoholic, whatever it is. Again, you can share what you're drinking, what you're eating with us using that hashtag supper sorted. That's on Instagram and Twitter. Shall we have some Instagram posts?
I would love to see what is everyone doing out there. Supper sorted. The hashtag, it's the big hashtag of the day. It's trending. Rich, what are people saying out there?
Let's look at this. So there are pictures on your screen. That's looking pretty well arranged there. Lovely. Thank you.
Can you see who that's by?
We're going to
slightly out of our eyesight.
Beyond our eyesight. See exactly who. Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. That's looking pretty good. That's Mark Hicks's dish, isn't it? Very nice indeed.
I noticed they put the salad underneath the mushrooms. Here's another mushrooms with the salad underneath.
And that's good looking mushrooms. I loved Mark's mushrooms and the variety there. And obviously people have been able to have a good variety where you are as well. Oh, look, William, it's you in the corner.
I can see that's Rachel Davey. There she is, putting on her dressing with us in the background on a beautifully shaped plate. And Mr. Keta Smidge, there he is. They're enjoying themselves. A couple of glasses. Let's say they're having a glass of some of the good stuff.
No evidence of food there, which of course is not particularly an issue. They've gone, this person, Dr. Capelli, I think, gone for the Charlie Bigham approach of splitting between the...
An interesting ratio of mushroom to salad there, but I think that looks a really beautiful, wholesome autumnal dish.
Continue to go through. Oh, look at
There's Adele Bestwick. I mean, look at that. That looks like a smart interior of a sort of Michelin-star Japanese restaurant. Look at that sleek black plates.
Adele, I think you're winning the plating up award so far. That's looking very good. Oh. And coming back to our starting dish, the very first dish we did this evening, I think that's Susie. Susie, that's looking pretty delicious. We should say that Rupert, who joined us right at the beginning, has also been cooking along with us throughout this evening, and we might even come back to him later to find out how he's getting on. That's looking pretty good there as well, and yet another different sort of shape of plate. And lovely.
Good to see the Charlie Bigham's aprons coming out there. Hope I get one to take home.
Well, William, just wait and see. Look, and there we go again. There's more salmon looking fantastic.
I like that image is very good because it almost it evokes the shape of the fish, doesn't it?
It's looking rather tasty. I don't know about you, William, but this is not doing my hunger levels any good whatsoever indeed. And we'll just go to the next one as well. How are we doing? Some fantastic plates here. Thank you everyone so much for sharing. If you're yet to do so, supper sorted is the hashtag. Again, if you've got questions for us, just in terms of what you need to be doing when, please do send those through the Q&A. If you've got questions for the chefs, we'd love to hear those as well. And we'd love to just hear a bit more about successes, but also disasters, Instagram, Twitter. We're getting quite a lot of talk about dehydrated apples.
Dehydrated apples was one of the big topics of the night. And anonymous attendee, he or she won't say who they are. Life's too short for dehydrating apples. I think you might be reflecting groundswell of public opinion there. Simon, Mandy and Rachel, they dehydrated their own apples in Manchester.
Their own apples. That's
their own apples. Sounds very good. Jane Pitchford says, I not only dehydrated the apples, but used an Earl Grey tea. Going off piste already. It's nice to see someone swerving off and having a little bit of playful activity there.
Lovely. And there's a nice wine question, which we'll come to in a second, William. But I think probably it's time for another poll. And what we're going to just get your very quick take on now, please, is across our 5 dishes, which of those particularly got you salivating? So your choices: was it the cured salmon, the woodland mushroom salad, the smoked haddock, however you cooked it, the venison that's going to be coming up very shortly now, or the sticky apple cake, not forgetting the toffee sauce? William, if pushed, which one of these would you particularly be wanting to?
Well, every time I go for it, you say it's the option that's not up there, since I can't read them. What did it say? Sticky apple cake with toffee sauce. Yes, I've got to go for that.
Okay,
absolutely
lovely.
Wonderful.
Thank you. We'll just give people just a couple of seconds.
Vote, keep voting, come on.
Vote early, vote often. We will close that poll now. Thank you. And we will reveal the results. Oh. So there we go. We're asking this at a particular time in the evening, it is Henry's smoked haddock, which comes out top, which may be because we're asking you this question probably at the same time as you are consuming it. But lovely, and actually some good showings for all of the dishes. So 23% for the salmon, 10% for the salad, 41% for smoked haddock. Fantastic stuff. It's lovely to see that everyone's enjoying different dishes.
It is very good. Now, there's quite a key question here from Francis Doyen coming, which is not that one. There was yes. Do we need to turn the oven on for the pudding? I think there's no harm in turning the oven on. I would put it on because there's nothing like getting to the point where the oven should have been on. If it's on, it'll just warm up the house. So the answer, Graham Rule, is yes, turn your oven on for the pudding. And actually, we're going to be coming to Merlin LeBron Johnson fairly shortly because there's a bit of pre-prep that we need to do before we go to the main course with the magnificent Tommy Myers.
So we're going to go to Merlin very, very quickly, but a lovely question there from Wendy, William. I'm imagining so the question just for everyone at home is, could William recommend any British wines? This sounds like the start of like a 4-hour lecture, William. So if we could possibly be concise in responding to Wendy's lovely question.
Wendy Wilson-Beck, what a fantastic question that is. Yes, of course I could. There are so many wonderful wines. There's a lot of great English sparklings, Gusbourne, wines from Chapel Down. If you want to try some wonderful white wines, I mentioned Rathfinny, that's over down there in Sussex. one of my favourite English whites is a Sussex Reserve. It's only available through the Gladwin brothers, and they have several restaurants. They have the Shed in Notting Hill, they've got Rabbit on the King's Road, and they have their own restaurant, Sussex in Soho. If you go there, ask for a bottle of Sussex Reserve. It is their own wine, and it is not dissimilar to my favourite current bottle of Riesling. It's rather Alsatian-like, and it comes in a bottle that's fairly similar. I have to say, I love it so much. I bought some of the bottles in magnums, Sussex Reserve from the Gladwin brothers, if you can try and get hold of some. But so many good wines now in England, and also some very good Welsh wines. If you want to go all the way up north in the country, a bottle of Renishaw's sparkling wine, which actually was wine that my uncle put down many years ago. It's the most northerly vineyard in Western Europe. Well, it was the most northerly vineyard in Western Europe until someone planted a vineyard about 5 miles north. Those dastardly people. Well, there you go, Rich.
William, look, thank you for your not branching out into a conference session. More shout-outs to Aidan and Erin doing the donkey work. Whilst my son and I sit and enjoy the wine, I like the division of labour going on in the Lunt household. Merseys in Sussex, loving the Bigham's Banquet. A question from Matthew Swan. Matthew, hello again, saying, loving the evening, are there any plans to do a Christmas one? Well, keep on sending through suggestions, and you never know. And it would be great to get Charlie's view on that. I don't know if Charlie is very quickly available just to give his view on that particular question. Might be catching Charlie unawares, but Charlie, are you there?
I'm back. I'm here. Yes.
There he is.
I didn't hear the question though.
So a question from Matthew saying he's so loving this evening that are there any plans for a Christmas revisiting?
Oh gosh, what a lovely thought. I mean, I think we'll have to see. I mean, I just want to, maybe a good moment just to say thank you to everyone who's taken part. I think it's you know, I'm enjoying it a lot, and it's lovely and obviously fantastic that we're raising all this money for chefs in schools. So definitely, you know, I'm sure we'll try and find a time to do this again. I'm not quite sure when, but it would be lovely to do it again. And what I hope, I just hope that everyone's having enough time to eat their food as well as cook their food. I don't know if anybody wants to sort of send in a message if they think we're giving you not enough time to eat. Do let us know, because that's obviously a pretty important part of the evening as well.
Wonderful. Now, there is a question from Francis Doyne that's come in, which is, what oven temperature do we need for the apple cake? And we have just the man who's going to answer this question. We're going to him a little bit early because there's a bit of prep, as I mentioned earlier, that needs doing. Merlin LeBron Johnson. This is a man, he opened his first restaurant in London at the age of 24. He's now got one of Somerset's finest restaurants. It's Osip in Bruton. It's Bruton, the new Notting Hill. Honestly, I read about that the other day. Maybe Merlin can tell us. Merlin, welcome to Bigham's Banquet.
Good evening, William. Thank you for the introduction.
Now listen, just let's knock this one on the head, shall we? Is Bruton the new Notting Hill?
I can't answer that.
just say no, of course it's
no,
not.
Of course not.
Bruton is
How could you suggest such a thing?
Bruton is a town in Somerset. Quickly, just help Francis Doyne.
What? 170 degrees.
170 degrees. There you go, Francis. Now, we're jumping ahead to do the dessert so that it's ready while it's ready to enjoy later, so that you can cook the main course without being too stressed. Merlin, first of all, tell us where you are. Are you in Bruton?
I'm not in Bruton, no. I'm very honoured to be at the Charlie Bigham's test kitchen, at the quarry, which is an amazing place. Yeah.
Fantastic. Right, now, the floor is yours. Give us some heads up on what we need to be doing with the dessert right now at precisely 7.5 minutes past 8.
Okay, so I think the first thing I was going to say is that we're going to prepare the dessert, but the cake is going to go in the oven when everybody sits down to eat the main course. So I'm going to make the cake batter and the sauce, and I'm going to leave it to you to do the cooking. I'm going to start by making the toffee sauce, which is basically a bit of background on the cake that I'm making. It's loosely based on a recipe for one of my favorite puddings, which is sticky toffee pudding. But I wanted to really celebrate the apple season, which we're basically in the middle of right now. So I've replaced the dried dates with dried apples, which I know was well, I don't know how many people have actually dehydrated their apples. And if you haven't, it's not the end of the world. I did a little test recipe earlier, and I've done it a few times without dehydrating the apples, and it's a slightly different result, but it's still a good result. The main difference is if you dehydrate the apples and then you add liquid to them, they're going to absorb the liquid. It's a bit like cooking pasta or rice. Whereas if you don't, the apples are sort of going to float in the liquid, thereby creating a little bit too much liquid for your cake. So if you haven't been able to dehydrate the apples, I would just add a little, let's say, take away 150 ml of water, which is what I did earlier. And I actually managed to make a cake, which turned out pretty good. So anyway, back to the cake. I'm going to start by making the sauce, because that takes about 10 minutes just to boil gently. And then whilst the sauce is boiling, I'm going to make the cake batter. So to make the sauce, it's like the easiest sauce in the world. Take double cream, dark brown sugar, and a reasonable amount of butter. And all you do is just chuck everything in the pan together, bring it up to the boil while stirring it. If you don't stir it, because the sugar's already very dark, it might start to caramelize and maybe even burn. So it's important to stir it while it's coming up. So add the sugar and the butter. Here we go. I'm just going to put that on a medium to high heat and let that slowly come up to the boil whilst keeping a vigilant eye on it. And I'm going to start to make my cake batter. So it's a really, as long as you've got all the ingredients prepared, it's a pretty simple process. We're going to start by creaming the butter. So here I've got 125 grams of soft butter. And the reason the butter needs to be soft is because we're making the cake by hand, we're going to be creaming it. And if the butter was hard, it wouldn't go nice and creamy, and you would end up having a sort of separated mass from your butter and your eggs and your sugar, which might result in a lumpy cake. So the most important thing here is to have nice, soft, workable butter, which I'm going to add into a large mixing bowl. There we go. And I'm going to use a wooden spoon just to start to cream the butter, make it nice and light. There's not a great deal of butter in this cake, but there is quite a lot of butter in the sauce. So I've creamed the butter, didn't take too long, and then I'm gonna add the soft brown sugar, and I've also got the bicarbonate of soda here. So chuck that in there. Give it a nice mix. Start to bring it together. It will seem quite thick at the moment, but we're going to loosen it when we add the eggs. So just keep mixing until you've got a nice paste. Here we go. So if you haven't cracked your eggs already, like I have, now's the time to do that. Because what we're going to do is we're going to tip the eggs in one by one, and as we tip the eggs in, we're going to add a spoonful of flour. And the reason we're going to add the flour at the same time as the eggs is just to sort of stabilize the cake mix and stop it from getting lumpy. So I'm going to add one egg. Whoop. Nice spoonful of flour. Give it a good mix. Just return my attention to the sauce quickly. There we go. Back to the cake. Give that a mix, and you can see that that's already starting to look a bit more like a cake batter now, which is reassuring. We'll go one more egg. Another spoonful of self-raising flour. Give that another mix. And when I was asking what equipment I was needing for the recipe, I suggested using muffin molds or cupcake molds because I thought it would be nice to do individually plated cakes for the end of the meal. It just so happens that we couldn't actually find any muffin molds, but it doesn't matter at all. This is a pretty standard cake batter, and it will work in a normal cake tin. It will work in muffin molds. It will work in a loaf tin. The only thing that will vary slightly is the cooking temperature. Now, when I've done it in the muffin molds or cupcake molds, it takes 15 minutes, usually at 170 degrees, although the time does vary, obviously, with different ovens. And if I baked this one I baked earlier in a loaf tin, it took 35 minutes at 170 degrees. The best way to test if the cake's ready is to stick a skewer or a knife in, and if it comes out clean, then the cake is ready. And if it comes out with still cake mixture on it, then you want to cook it for a little bit longer. Because there's so much lovely kind of moist dark brown sugar and fruit in this recipe, there's a fair amount of kind of margin for error in that if it's overcooked a little bit, it won't dry out. So it's best, if you're not sure, just to put it in for a little bit longer. But I would say if you're doing a loaf mold like this or a cake tin, a minimum of half an hour. And if you're doing the cupcake molds, we're looking at about 15 minutes.
Merlin, I've got a quick question from Jane Pitchford.
Yeah.
Quite specific, quite urgent. 170 degrees normal or fan? She wants to get
I'm
it
using
right.
a fan oven. Yeah, so fan. Yeah.
Fan, thank you.
So I've just added the final egg, and I'm going to add one more spoonful of flour. Give it a nice mix.
Large muffin tray, which I'm finding impossible to line with grease-proof paper. Any advice? He's struggling to line his muffin tray.
So my advice would be to grease the muffin tray with a little bit of butter, and then cut a circle of grease-proof paper that's obviously larger than the actual indent, and then push that in, and the butter should adhere the greaseproof paper to the edges of the muffin tray.
There you go, John Collins. Your muffin tray question answered. Thank you.
If your muffin tray is non-stick, I'm 99% sure that if you grease the muffin tray itself with butter, the cake will also come out fine, as this is a non-stick tray, and I've greased it with butter. And when I did a test earlier, it came out fine.
If it doesn't, John, and they stick, and it's worse than the burnt hazelnuts, and you can go down to OSIP, march on that restaurant, find Merlin.
Exactly. There we go. I'm just getting a bit more direct heat over the sauce because it was taking a while to come up to boil. So I've added all 4 eggs to the cake mix. I don't know if you can see this. It's looking like a nice smooth batter. And now I'm going to add the remainder of the self-raising flour. You can add it all in one go. Here we go. And give it a good mix. And the mixture will suddenly start to look a bit more solid, but that's okay because we're now going to let it down with the rest of the fruit, which has still got some of the tea, or it should have some of the tea still sitting in it. So now that starts to look a bit more like a sourdough bread dough. I'm going to add the dried raisins, or sultanas, excuse me. Stir those in.
Merlin, there's been a few comments during the day about the size of the cake. It serves 4. People shouldn't be worried if their cake is larger than they thought, and it's just, you're a generous man and you like to share your love with cake.
I am a very generous man, and what I would say is that there will be a little bit left over, but I don't think it's ever a bad thing to have too much sticky apple cake, partly because you can obviously eat it the next day, but you can also freeze it. And the sauce also makes a little bit extra, and the sauce keeps very well in the fridge, and it also freezes. There's nothing wrong with having a little bit of sticky apple cake in the freezer for a rainy day or a dry day. If you're doing if you have like a multiple muffin or cake tray, I would just fill them all up. And if you're doing a cake like this, should fit perfectly. Just bear in mind, and this is super important, that we have got bicarbonate of soda and self-raising flour in this mix. So you will need to underfill whatever mold you're using to bake them a little bit. It won't double in size, but it will rise a bit. So I'm now going to add the apples, which I've soaked in the tea. Do not forget to take the tea bags out, because they're not part of the recipe, actually. So I'm going to add the apples. Just give that a nice stir. Also keeping my eye on the sauce. There we go. Sauce is starting to come together. And this is what the batter should look like. Nice, lots of chunks of apple, lots of nice fruit, just bound with a sort of thick-ish batter, ready to go into the mold, but not into the oven until you sit down to eat. Here we go. All right, so you can see my mold's about half full here, so there's plenty of room for it to rise. I would say you'd want to leave about a couple of, a centimetre at least for it to rise.
Merlin, Lisa Huncock's just messaged, do you need to add the water from the dehydrated apples into the mixture?
There should be, if they were dried, there should be some water left over, and that can go into the mixture, yes.
Would be great. And Caroline Kelly asks, have the sultanas gone in yet?
Yes, the sultanas went in just before the apples and the tea, but you can put them in. You can put them in now.
Right, Caroline, get the sultanas in now.
Okay. So I'm going to put my cake to the side, and what I'd like to tell you about the cake, as you'll be cooking it later on, is when the cake is ready, what's really nice to do is to take a fork or a knife and make lots of holes over the surface of the cake, and then take a few spoonfuls of your lovely toffee sauce and just spoon it over the cake. You don't want to have loads, you just want to almost like glaze the cake, and then put it back in the oven for a maximum of 4 minutes. And what will happen, you'll get this lovely sort of toffee shine on the cake. You will then reserve the rest of the sauce for serving alongside, but it will just give the top of the cake a really nice crust. I don't know if you can see this one, or how clearly you can see it, but that's what I did here. So I just glazed the top. There we go. So keep whisking the sauce or stirring the sauce. And once it comes up to the boil, you just need to turn it down and let it simmer for about 5 or 10 minutes until it's the thickness of a sort of a loose toffee sauce. It's up to you. If you want to reduce it, if you like it to be really, really thick, you can just keep reducing it over a low heat. You're going to be pouring it over the cake. And then the final thing that we'll add to the sauce when it's ready is a pinch of salt, which will just cut through the sweetness and just sort of balance it out a little bit. And a good glug of some sort of brandy or Calvados, or even some delicious eau de vie. I'm going to use this amazing 3-year-old Somerset cider brandy from Julian Temperley. I would add it at the end of the sauce being ready, just so you don't cook out all the alcohol and flavor, and you can still sort of taste some of the body of the brandy. So I'm nearly there with the sauce. The cake's ready to go in the oven. And the final thing to do is just prepare your creme fraiche. So I suggested whipping the creme fraiche. If you don't like creme fraiche, or you can get creme fraiche, any cream will do, or even ice cream, or all three. Why not? And that you want to do at the last minute. So just take the creme fraiche, put it in a bowl, and then just whip it as if you were going to whip cream. And that's it. Yeah, pretty much.
That has been absolutely fantastic, and I can't wait to see these giant apple cakes that are going to be hanging around for days, unless, of course, you've got very sensibly greedy people in your kitchens now. So a little bit more from Merlin in due course, but of course it's now time for our main course. Tommy Myers, Thomasina Myers, there she is. Not ready for her, I was going to give her an introduction. Tommy Myers may have first come into your culinary universe, into your mindset, when she was on when she won MasterChef several years ago. Or maybe you know about her because of her extraordinary Oaxaca chain, a chain of Mexican street food restaurants that have been thriving, let's not talk about COVID, up and down the country for several years now. She's produced many, many cookbooks. She's becoming, I think, one of our best loved female chefs in the UK. It's Tommy Myers. Tommy, welcome to Bigham's Banquet.
Hello, William.
So nice to see you. Are you at home?
I'm at home. I'm at home in my kitchen, built by my father. And yeah, it's very nice.
Is that a good thing?
Well, he's quite good. I mean, it's quite a nice kitchen. It's a bit slow. You know, he's kind of 80 now.
I love the double doors behind you. It looks like there's a restaurant next door.
I know. That was the look I was going for. They're quite sexy, aren't they?
Tommy, it's so nice to see you. How have you been over the last few months? Give us a quick update on how...
Well, lockdown. So lockdown's kind of been funny, weird, but also I'm a trustee of Chefs in Schools. So I am really, really excited by how in lockdown we fed I think we produced 330,000 meals. A lot of the Oaxaca chefs were cooking over furlough, and I think loads of people found out about Chefs in Schools. And then just with all this COVID stuff and how important health and nutrition is, we've seen how it affects, you know, how badly you kind of get affected by obesity and all that. It feels that people are really thinking it's important to feed our children good food. And I couldn't be prouder to be part of Chefs in Schools. And I'm so excited that this is always one of it. So brilliant, very right.
And you're so right to mention it, because of course it's one of the main reasons we're doing tonight. Just tell us a bit about it. How long has it been going on for? And if you're a school that wants a chef in your school, can you apply for one? How does it actually work?
chefsinschools.org.uk. So we sat around a table in Oaxaca, funny enough, about 2.5 years ago. Henry Dimbleby, Nicole Pisani, amazing ex-NOP chef, Joanna Weinberg, a few of us, and even the head teacher at Art Franklin, where my kids were at. We were like, how can we make food better in schools? And I talked to an amazing head whose chef won an award at the OFM Awards, the Food Micro Awards, many years ago. And he said, the most important thing is you've got to put a chef in the kitchen who really fundamentally understands how food's got to look great, it's got to taste great. They're so excited and passionate about food. And you think that you put one chef into a school kitchen and you can turn around the eating habits of 600 or 650 kids. It just makes sense. So I think the model is brilliant. We've been into about 40 schools now, and the kids love it. And also the chefs become heroes. So food becomes centre of the school, and everyone gets excited about it. And these chefs are these great guys. And the next campaign we're going to do this year is it's got to get on Ofsted. So Ofsted reports have got to start thinking about school food, because it matters. You know, food is connected to physical health, mental health, how susceptible you are to viruses. It's really important. And of course, the sustainability of the planet, you know, how we eat is really important in terms of global warming. So it's a great charity. I mean, you know,
well, what
else can I say? Do a little dance.
Education is not just about the academia. It's about the whole child, isn't it? And the whole child is fed and educated and can be taught through food, and they can learn so much more, as well as being enriched. You know, there's lots of evidence, isn't there, out there that better fed children concentrate better, they work better, and get better results.
They're brainier, and not to mention, you know, learning about the importance of the farmer and the producer, how well they look after the soil. You know, it's all about climate change and biodiversity now. We've got to support the farmers who are custodians of the soil that we get our food from.
Tommy, tell us about
learning all that.
Pan-fried venison with mole blanco and pink leaves. The floor is yours, Tommy.
So last night I was drinking some whiskey and I realised I didn't have any venison. I'd forgotten to order it. So maybe it was the night before. So I phoned up my friends at Parmesan, great butcher up north, and they sent me these lovely venison haunch steaks. Here they are. So what I've done is I've crushed in my pestle and mortar rosemary, juniper, garlic. I've got these amazing, really cool kadodi peppercorns from Vietnam, which are just delicious, and you know, sea salt. So that's been sitting here for about 2 hours, just kind of, you know, getting used to all those flavors. I've got my char grill that's hot. I hope everyone who's cooking has got a hot pan, because that's really important. The first thing I'm going to do is get my onion on, because that needs a bit of char. So what we're doing is we're making a Mexican mole. So when I talk about mole, I'm talking about sauce. Guacamole is avocado sauce. So I've got an onion here, and I'm just going to cut it into wedges. And we are going to roast this onion. We're going to get some black and some char on it, because that is the inimitable flavour of a Mexican salsa or sauce or mole. It's that charred nature that gives it a kind of smoke and character and body. So,
Tommy, can I just stop you there for a second, because you've just done something that is going to change my life and change the life of so many cooks. You chopped an onion without peeling it.
Well, I'm taking a bit of peel off now, but yeah, you don't actually, you can kind of, you know, the peel's coming off. You can see it's just kind of, but it doesn't really matter, because we're just going to throw these onion wedges straight into my pan here. And you don't want to use your best pan, because it's going to get a bit blackened and charred. So don't use your best pan here, because whoever bought it for you is going to get a little bit upset. I've got some lovely, I mean, amazing that the kind of young garlic is still, our seasons are so kind of crazy at the moment, but I've got some lovely garlic here, kind of still wet garlic, weirdly, although the season has passed. But I got this in the market the other day, and we're going to put that. Now, the garlic, you want the skin on, because the skin protects the garlic from burning, which protects its sweetness, and that's going to go into our salsa too. So that is on, and those are going to take about 5-10 minutes to char. Now, what I thought I'd do is get my venison on too, because what we'll do is we'll cook the venison and then we'll let it to rest for 10 minutes. And the resting is going to be just, you know, because I quite like a rare venison, so we want to cook it rare and then rest it so it's not too bloody on your plate. So I'm just going to turn this up a little bit. I've had this heating up, and we're going to just slap this venison on. I'm hoping my kitchen's not going to get too smoky. And that's just going to go on like that. I've got a little bit of extra, little venison nugget there, and I can put that plate behind. And now this venison is quite thick. It basically needs a couple of minutes aside. And and then we'll rest it, and now we'll let all the blood relax and let it do its thing, and it means when you cut it, hopefully it won't be too bloody. It's quite hard assessing how well done a steak is, venison or beef. Venison's obviously very sustainable choice. We've got so many deer roaming around this country, around the whole of the UK, too many in fact. We're talking about biodiversity and letting the land grow back, sucking in carbon. They cause quite a lot of damage. So we should be eating it because it's good for the land, and it's also incredibly good meat. It's lean, it's high in protein, low in fat, and it's totally wild. So it's a great choice. Also venison mint, great and spicy. So that's on a couple of minutes aside. Generally, if you want tough steak, well done, you you just want to feel this flesh between here. And if it's kind of nice and loose on your first finger, that's rare. And then that's kind of, well, that's rarely rare, and that's kind of medium rare, and then that's kind of well done. Yeah. And that's how you do it. So the venison is on. Meanwhile, I have got, we're making a mole. So moles are normally incredibly complex sauces. Lots of chilies and spice, nuts and dried raisins and fruit. Oaxaca, a town in Mexico, which I love, our restaurant named after, is famous for its many moles. This mole is a very simple one that I first tried at a restaurant called Rosetta in Mexico City, owned by a wonderful female chef with 2 kids. So it was an incredible restaurant. And I had a white mole there. And I kind of talked to the waiter and I said, what's in it? And then I just approximated the ingredients. And this is what we're going to do. We've got 100 grams of the almonds, and they're going to go into my blender. This is a Vitamix. It's a great blender because it blends things really smoothly. But at home, it doesn't matter if it's a bit rustic, this sauce. But if you were having a kind of cheesy dinner party, it'd be nice if your sauce is really smooth. And these blenders are great for that. We use them in our restaurants. I use them at home. They are really good. So it's going to be a bit noisy now. I'm just going to turn this on. Okay, great. Now I'm going to turn my venison. We're going to see how it's doing. Looking pretty good. He's quite thick, this guy, so he's going to need probably 2.5 minutes. Apart from that little bit. Okay, but look, you want a nice, you don't need to play around with that, you just rest it. Meanwhile, we can look at my onion, which is, now if you wanted to add chili, this is where you'd add your chili and the mole, you'd add it now, you dry roast it. But I don't want to destroy the flavour, the colour of the salsa, because it's a white mole. So we're not adding chili to this. But one thing you could do if you like spices, you could add a bit of dry chili. What's the louder? Okay. So you want to add dry chili to your beetroot if you like a bit of chili. But this is just a very calm, not too spicy. And you see those blackened bits, that's what we like. That's the flavour. We like really great flavour. That's the blackened thing we like. So that's going to give you all that wonderful Mexican. Got the salsa on. Now, come back to me, my lovely husband. I've got a pomegranate here. I'm going to start prepping it. Roll it around. There we are. And then get the bowl. And I'm going to get some of my pomegranate out for when I'm, fire alarm, hold there. Put that on, 5. Might open some doors, hold on there.
I think if anyone was doubting whether this was live or not, I think that's just being proven. We're going to have Tommy back in one moment, we hope. Welcome back, Tommy.
So just put this on, hold on here.
Okay, Tommy, we're going to pop over to Rupert just while that alarm goes off. 1 second. Rupert, hello.
Hello, this is unexpected. We've got no fire alarms here. I'm at about the same stage Tommy is. I've got my venison in the pan. That's sealing up nicely, getting nice in color. Keep turning it so it cooks nice and evenly. My vegetables are browning up nicely. Some of the onions remained a little bit firm, so I've broken mine up into smaller pieces just so I can cook through a little bit quicker.
Merlin, I've got a question for you from Finn Doyne about the cake. You know that. Can you answer this? I don't know, because there's a question about the cake batter is very runny. How do we rectify this? Can you answer this question on behalf of one of your fellow chefs?
So the cake batter was too runny. It's probably okay, just don't fill your cups too much because it will be a little bit more fluid. It may take a little bit more baking. If it's really, really running, and it's hard to tell without looking at it, a couple more tablespoons of flour should bring it back.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Rupert, just to go back one step, we had Tommy putting a range of lovely things in the blender.
Yes.
The alarm went off. Would you, if people got slightly distracted by the alarm, what was in the blender?
So into the blender, she's got pine nuts and the almonds. I don't think she just whizzed those up to a sort of paste. My blender's slightly different. I use a NutriBullet, so one of the ones you use smoothies for. But you can see you end up with just sort of a nutty crumb. So it's pine nuts and almonds. And to that, we're going to start adding water and blending it so it becomes smooth. I don't know if she's coming back. If not, I'm going to carry on the moling. So effectively to your 100 grams of pine nuts and almonds, you're going to be adding around about 100 mils of water. If you've got a blender with a jug top, you can just add it slowly till it hits a nice creamy consistency. So I'm adding some of that and I'm going to put my lid back on.
Lovely. Rupert, just while you're doing that, just to say, Tommy, we're going to come back to you at the end. So once you've got your dish, we'll come back to you, but we're going to stick with Rupert
right.
for the cooking.
God, no pressure here. Blimey. So we've got some water in there. So we're going to put the blender back on. It's going to be a little bit noisy. One moment. Here we go. There we go. As you can see, that's gone really creamy, almost like a milkshake. So we've got nice creamy consistency to it. Take my lid off again. To this, we're going to add our charred vegetables. So we've got the onions, which should be now softened but nicely blackened. The garlic, I think, as Tommy said, take the skin off now. That's the bit you can remove. It's protected the garlic, but your garlic should now be really kind of almost smoky. That's the flavor you're going for. Think of all those Mexican flavors. So remove the skin from your garlic. Here we go. Garlic, onions, and that's going to go straight into our blender. In we go. And then we're going to add a little bit of spice to this. This is where we're going to add about a quarter of a teaspoon, half a teaspoon of ground allspice, and the same with ground cinnamon. So they go in. Really nice with the venison. If you think of the sort of British way we eat venison, you might have it with sort of bread sauce or something along those lines. Some of those lovely flavors. Works really, really well. I'm going to add a little bit of salt to it as well. So we're going to season it. Take it easy to start. You can always add some more, but you can't take it out. So lid back on your blender. And you're going to blitz this so it's a smooth sauce. Here we go. There we go. That should be pretty smooth. Let's have a look. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. So you should have a smooth, creamy consistency on your sauce. Hopefully you can just about make that out on the camera there. Just check the seasoning. If it needs a bit more salt, you can add a bit more salt. Actually, that is pretty good. Just clear myself a little bit of space. So I've had my venison resting while we've been finishing that off. So that's nicely colored and nicely rested. There's a few juices just coming out of it, which is nice. And venison's it does need to be served pink. Rare is best for me. Obviously, if you don't like, cook it on a little bit, but it can go a little bit dry and starts to taste slightly livery if you really overcook it. So keeping a bit of pinkness on it is definitely preferred. So we're going to start plating this up. If I can find a plate, so bear with me. Here we go. So to plate this up, we're actually going to put, on the base of our plate, we're going to put some of this lovely mole on the base of our plate. I've got a lovely big bowl here. Again, I'm going to plate this up almost as if it's for 2 people to share from the table. So we've got a lovely bit of that mole. That recipe will make more than you need, but it's great to have some extra on the side. Then we're going to start slicing up our venison. So the sausage knife again. Again, slicing it, I don't like it too thin. So I like to slice my venison with a little bit of thickness to it, so you've got nice chew. So I go about sort of 1 centimetre thick. And hopefully you can just see that's lovely and pink in the middle. Again, if you want it more cooked, cook it on a little bit hot. It's a funny one to judge venison. It often feels, when you're squeezing it, more cooked than it really is. It's one that you just kind of have to cook over and over and over again to kind of get the feel for it. So I'm going to slice this up. It's also, you probably all noticed as you went out and bought it, that every single steak you've bought has been a slightly different size and slightly different shape. And that is the nature of venison. They don't come in convenient sizes and shapes. Here we go. So that's looking pretty good. A lovely venison. Right. And we're going to start dressing this. So I'm going to place the venison nicely onto our mole. I've probably got more venison here than I need on this plate, but I suspect there's a couple of crew members floating around who will happily polish this off in a moment.
Rupert, while you're just
Yes.
doing that, I'm going to pop back to Tommy, where I think that alarm has now stopped sounding.
Oh, fantastic.
We're going to go over to Tommy. Tommy, are you there?
Tommy, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi.
Has disaster been averted?
It's on. The fire alarm is off. Disaster has been averted.
Excellent.
I'm going to get my beetroot, which is here, in the oven. Looking all gnarly. I've slightly kind of, there it is. And
Really nice.
we're going to plate it up. We've got some lovely radicchio here, which we're slicing. So this is a kind of super like fun, this is like ancient Mexican food, enriching a sauce with nuts to add the protein. I've got, did you put white chocolate in yours? There's some white chocolate here that I put in here. And it's just a lovely, lovely, smooth mole. And it's going in there. And this is going to feed 4 of us. And it's just so full of flavour. It's got the cinnamon in, it's got the allspice, which are lovely Mexican spices. We've got those beetroot there. And I haven't sliced the venison yet. I'm going to do that now. That is there. Wonderful. We've got the radicchio, which we can just put around there. The pomegranate is going to go so well. The sweetness of the pomegranate with the venison will be wonderful. And fresh mint, which will also just pick up the flavours of everything. I'm going to get the venison out of the plate warmer, which is in here. Be resting. So there we are. I've got my board to cut it. And you don't need that much venison. In fact, for this, I'm just going to lovely pink slices, which is how we want them. Lovely, lovely. I'm going to put those lovely rare venison and drizzle them with a bit of extra olive oil, which is here. There we are. Now we missed a lot of the chat about the mole. The vinegar's very important in Mexican food to add acidity to these rich, nutty sauces. So I used a Moscatel, but you can also use a really good quality cider vinegar, which is really good for you. Vinegar is also very good for gut bacteria, but just the acidity of them really lifts that nuttiness of the sauce. The allspice that we use, lovely, rounded, great flavor, and cinnamon. Those are classic Mexican spices, really add to the flavor of that salsa. And then if you've got some oregano, dried oregano, the Mexicans use it a lot, and it just adds a lovely floral, woody flavor to that mole. Really, really delicious. So this is a proper Aztec, like pre-Hispanic, ancient salsa as they would have eaten it, but in a slightly more modern way, using great British ingredients that are in season. So that is my dish, the roast beets and venison with white mole.
It's beautiful and wonderful. It's so nice to see you in your kitchen. Let me ask you, day-to-day cooking, I mean, are you someone, do you plan your menus? Do you go to the market or supermarket, see ingredients and then cook, or are you a recipe junkie? What's your
we've got a fantastic farmers market on our doorstep. Every Sunday, I'm there with my trolley. I've got a trolley, and I just buy whatever looks good. And then during the week, I just open the fridge and see. I buy loads of vegetables, and then you just see what's out there and what tastes good. And I think it's quite instinctive. If you guide yourself by the seasons, the choice gets more limited. And then you can really play around with a vegetable, like a beetroot. Like these beetroots are from a friend bought these for me from his garden. And it's so lovely to get different sizes of beetroot, really different varieties, different flavors. And you get that at markets. You buy direct from a farmer, go to a farm shop. You get that wonderful variety, which is important. It's great to have better flavor. Interesting, the candy beetroot is really fun. So I get really excited by vegetables in season because they're colourful, they're fun, you play around with them, you get to know about them. And then, all the different cuisines. There's so many different nationalities in this country, and you can go to different continents for your inspiration, which I think is really fun.
And of course, people go to your restaurants for Mexican inspiration, but where did this idea and this love of Mexican food come from? Because you don't look very Mexican.
What? I studied Spanish at school. I went to Mexico on my gap year, and I think I just thought I was going to learn some more Spanish and drink some tequila. I discovered that great tequila is delicious. It doesn't give you a hangover. Just makes you want to dance. And I also discovered this incredible cuisine. The biodiversity, it's one of the most biodiverse countries in the world. The ingredients range from coast to coast, from different regions. The cooking is extraordinary. And that's why chefs are so excited about going to those markets. You see 200 varieties of chilies. You see scores of varieties of corn, which is full of nutrition and amino acids and micro in hues of black and blue and white and yellow and red, and wild herbs, wild greens, tropical fruit. And it's mind-blowing. It's really exciting. So I came back and I thought, this food's very good. Where is it? And it was nowhere to be seen. So I think 10 years later, when I was still thinking, there's no Mexican anywhere in Europe, anywhere in Britain, where is this food that I loved so much? So I went to Mexico City, opened a cocktail bar with some friends, and really started traveling around the regions, because it's like Italy. I think the food of Italy reminds me of the food of Mexico. It's really regional, and the recipes are passed down from the grandmother to the grandchildren, and it's just a really wonderful place. Everyone loves food there, and it's not about how rich you are. The peasant for cooking is just full of flavour and deliciousness.
And is it a cuisine that you think is relatively simple to do in the average kitchen, or do you need lots of prep and huge, arrays of spices and vast, versatile ingredients? Or can you cook food simply every day?
Well, no, so, it depends. So in Mexico, everything is celebrated over food. So if you were preparing a wedding, you might make a mole that had 54 ingredients, and where you'd be grinding chilies and spices for a couple of days. I've made a mole that's taken 2.5 days. But if it's day-to-day cooking, it's just about fresh ingredients and, roasting a few tomatoes and chilies for salsa. And so, like all things, the home cooking is much simpler, and then it can get much more elaborate if you want it to be. But really, my pestle and mortar is in my back wash up, but you've got a pestle and mortar and a good food blender, and that's really all you need. And some charring. You've got to get the charring in.
Got to get the charring. Lots of charring. I think you certainly have been the chariest on the show.
Yeah, smoking out. I always do this. I always smoke out kitchen. I really want to eat Merlin's pudding, by the way. Everything you said, make more pudding, cream and ice cream. That just sounds delicious.
Well, guess what? We're going to be going to Merlin. Tommy Myers, that was a complete inspiration. Thank you so much. Wonderful to see you in your kitchen. And also, we must thank Rupert for rescuing it just at that moment when the fire alarms were going, the smoke alarm was going. But we need to move on now. the main course. There you have it, well and truly plated, looking magnificent. I hope it was as good in your home kitchen. Please do share your photographs on Instagram. Supper sorted. But now, Merlin LeBron Johnson. We met him earlier as he was prepping his sticky apple cake. It's a big cake. It's a cake for many people. Don't let that put you off. Merlin, how is it going in your kitchen?
It's going good. Yeah, it's going good. We're just about ready to put the cake in the oven, the enormous apple cake. Yeah.
Okay. Anything more?
Are you talking about this kitchen or my kitchen back at the restaurant where I'm going to return to later on?
I'm just quite keen for you to get your pudding on the go. Is there anything more?
Yeah, I'm ready. I have not much to do other than put it in the oven right now.
That's fine. Will you, the nation wants to see Merlin LeBron Johnson put a cake in an oven, please.
All right, strap yourselves in. Here we go. So, 15 minutes timer if you've put it in a cupcake mold, half an hour if it's in a proper cake mold, and then once the timer goes off, we need to check it with a knife or a skewer and see if it's still wet inside, and if not, it's going to need a little bit longer. In the meantime, we've got the sauce here, which is cooked, and that is ready to go. I'm not sure if you can zoom in and have a little look at that. Lovely, nice, glossy, shiny caramelized sauce. And I'm going to take this moment to add a shot or a good dash anyway of lovely cider brandy. Obviously, you can use normal brandy if you don't have cider brandy, or even a nice eau de vie. Maybe some of Henry Harris's wife's vieille prune could work quite well. And we're just going to leave this on the side. And I think it's going to stay pretty hot, to be honest, but when it comes to the time to serve the cake, if it needs a bit of reheating, we can just do that over a low heat.
Wonderful. Merlin, thank you so much indeed. Now,
no worries.
We'll be tucking into your venison, if you haven't got venison, your steaks, your nice big slabs of beef, which I hope were perfectly pink in the middle. What are you drinking with it? Well, what I am suggesting, Reg, I'll give you a little cheeky glass.
Very much.
A glass of Rioja. Now, I think that this is a really fantastic pairing. I think it stands up to the flavour of game, the flavour of the venison. We touched on this briefly earlier. Rioja, of course, is not a grape, it's a region of Spain, north central Spain. There's a lot of grapes from that part of the world. This particular one is Tempranillo. Now, the Spanish up in Rioja, they can mix various grape varietals to make the Rioja. This particular one is 100% Tempranillo. Conde Valdemar, this is a 2018. I often think that a Rioja is a bit fruitier than a Cabernet Sauvignon. It's got a few more cherries, a bit more bite, a bit more power than a Pinot Noir. Valdemar, the bodegas, means winery. The Bodegas Valdemar, the Valdemar winery, has been in the same family since the 19th century. So they've been working on their wines and finessing the work that they do, I think, for some time now. I really, really love this. I think it's a very easy drinking red. It's as posh as you might wish for a posh red. I think it's as easily gluggable as a midweek red as well. It's smooth, it's velvety. It's very, very creamy. It's $11.95 on williamshousewines.com.
William, so we've been dealing with those pale things, haven't we? Yes. Now, there'll be many people who will say, look, we're almost out of time. We finally got round to a proper glass of wine. William, that is delicious.
People like, you can sit down and dwell. You know, the cake has still got a bit of baking to do. If you don't have a dessert wine, I reckon this can also match the cake. So don't worry about it. We do have a dessert wine, and I'll be sharing that with you in due course.
Brilliant, thank you very much indeed. Should we see some more pictures?
I would love to. Let's see.
Let's see some more of what people have been posting on Supper Sorted. So let's have a look. Oh, there we go. That's a lovely gratin from earlier on. Again, getting points for earthenware. Again,
that's quick. I rather like the previous one. Changing the wee-wee, that was very good.
And the pride. Congratulations, that's looking good. Again, fantastic apron modelling. Thank you, everyone. Look at this. These are some fantastic looking dishes. Look at
Sarah Reed there, smoked haddock. Look at that. That looks very rustic. A whole plate there of grater. There's so many pictures. We're racing on by now.
The only thing I can say is that I wonder if Charlie's going to be disappointed that the successes are so far outnumbering the failures. But look at this, what wonderful results. And again, as William said at the start of this evening, we've been cooking along at a professional chef pace. And for people to keep up, I think is quite remarkable. Can we give our participants a round of applause, William? Well done.
Now listen, Karen Walls asked a question. She says, I have a question for William. Can you tell us about his time on MasterChef? Are there any funny stories or even better, any secrets? Look, come on, Rich. Come on, Karen. We signed confidentiality agreements. I can't tell you what Joe Rona's really like. Do you really want to know the answer to that question? I could tell you some secrets, but only if you give more money. virginmoneygiving.com, search for Hackney School of Food. If you'll pump some money in there, I might tell you a few more things about MasterChef. I can tell you some things anyway. Rich, will you also tell us about the Charlie Bigham's Dinner on Me £7.50 off vouchers?
That's actually well. So people in their packs, along with their booklets and aprons and tea towels, have received one of these lovely little cards where I imagine you may well be feeling a bit exhausted after all of the efforts tonight. And actually what you'd really like tomorrow or maybe next week is to have a beautiful dish cooked for you. Thanks to one of these lovely vouchers, you can do just that. So please do, we very much hope you didn't dispose of it's a thinking it was packaging, but please do use that voucher worth £7.50 for a Charlie Bigham's meal. Please do that.
But I hope that you have been watching MasterChef. Actually, I'm filming the next one of the episodes for the next series, actually next week. I don't know if I can tell you these things. Often it's filmed about 6 months in advance. And I often forget that I've filmed it, and I don't realize that I've been on until I start getting plenty of abuse on Twitter. That's when you know you've been on the telly. But no, I've been doing it now for about 15 years now. It's a fantastic show. You know, what better way to spend some of your days than with the wonderful Greg Wallace and John Turode and the likes of Jay and Tom Parker Bowles and Amal Rajan and Grace Dent. You know, the wonderful thing I love about the professionals is it's one of the places where you really get amazing talent, raw talent, and often you do taste a dish that you think, actually, this could make this guy famous, and it often does go on to change some of those people's lives. Of course, MasterChef, the amateur show, is again similar. Think of people like Tommy Myers, for example, Drew Baker, some of these people who we've come to know and love now, who are part of our national food scene. As for secrets, I couldn't possibly tell you anything. What I can tell you, however, is a little heads up on the dessert wine.
Lovely.
Should we do that now?
Well, I was wondering, just very quickly, William, we've got our final poll for the evening. Should we just do a quick poll? And then, yes, let's come to dessert wine. So we are interested in how many of these courses you managed to get through. So, have you managed to do? Have you done the famous 5? You cooked every last bit. Have you got close? The fantastic 4, almost everything. Very well done. If so, 3 to crowd. Did you focus on your favourite dishes? 2-horse race. That was enough for you. Were you flying solo? Were you just focusing on getting one of those done? Or you go, oh, are we supposed to cook? Which of those applies to your experience from this evening? If you'd like to vote now, please. We'll have some dessert wine. We look very much looking forward to that. And then I think we're going to go across to Charlie in just a moment. But let's close that poll now and see how people have. Oh, look at that. That is quite terrific. The majority of you having managed all 5 courses. Well, look, we've already given you a round of applause for your efforts. And I think we can do so again. Thank you very much indeed.
And before we do the dessert one, let's go to Charlie Bigham. Charlie, let's catch up with you.
Well, that was interesting, wasn't it? Our venison course. Very tasty. I've just been having a mouthful. very delicious. But thank you. I mean, Thomasina, thank you very much, and also obviously Rupert for stepping in an emergency. That was fantastic. But really delicious. But I mean, thank you everybody for joining us this evening. Just to clarify about that voucher, in case there's any confusion about that, you can use that in most supermarkets. So if you go into Waitrose or Tesco or Sainsbury's and you find our food, take that voucher to the till, and they'll take that off your bill when you pay. So please do go and try a dish on us. But thank you very much indeed. I've certainly had some delicious food already. I'm looking forward to the apple cake. I've got my timer on. That big tin you saw, it's gone in for about 30 minutes. And what Merlin told me, he's just left, because he was in the kitchen here with me. And he said, just remember at the end, when you get it out, after about 25, 30 minutes, just glaze it with a bit of the sauce and pop it back into the oven for 4 minutes or so before bringing it out and cutting it up and serving it on the plates with that delicious sauce. Which had more butter than I've ever seen go into any sauce in it, but it means it's going to be very tasty. So, but yeah, a big thank you from me to all of our wonderful chefs, and brilliant that we've raised so much money for chefs in schools, and obviously thank you to you both in the studio. William, brilliant job, and really good fun. Thank you.
So Charlie, now listen, I'm going to ask you an impossible question, the hardest question of the day. If you had to take one of those dishes and package it and turn it into a Charlie Bigham's meal, which would it be? I think I know the answer, actually, because I know the most practical one that would work.
Well, I think, they were all delicious, and I haven't even had the last one yet. I think the smoked haddock gratin was particularly good, and I could see that, something like that, that's something we could make. But I'm going to be really interested to taste the Merlin's pudding, because we only just earlier this year started making a range of puddings, and so it'll be really interesting to see how his interesting seasonal take on the sticky toffee pudding compares with the very nice sticky toffee pudding that we make. I have a suspicion that Merlin's is going to be even better than ours, because he's such a fantastic chef.
Well, we'll have a taste off. Now, what is next for the Wells Food Festival, Charlie? What's there in the future? Hopefully going from virtual to actual, I imagine.
Well, we really hope. We're going to be sponsoring the Wells Food Festival. It's a really great event. I mean, in a normal year, about 20,000 people come on a Sunday. This year, sadly, that won't be happening, but in future, we really hope it's back next year. And what I think will be interesting, I hope that next year we'll be able to do an interesting blend of both the physical and for people who live nearby to Wells and can get there, but also I hope we'll have a virtual element to it as well. Indeed, if not before then, maybe another cook along like we've had tonight.
Thank you very much, Charlie. Well, look, I can feel the nation is crying out for one more wine recommendation. I know. Now, if you have purchased some Miranda late harvest Sauvignon Blanc, I think you're in for a treat. This is a really interesting wine. It's made from Casablanca, and Casablanca was made a denomination of origin just a few years ago. Well, in fact, in the 1990s, which actually is relatively recent history in terms of viniculture, particularly when you think of the DOs that would have been created in France, probably back there in the sort of 19th century, if not earlier than that. Pablo Morande, well, he was the man behind really putting Casablanca on the map. Casablanca, of course, where is it? Think of that thin strip of land that is Chile. Casablanca, just a little bit north of Santiago, the wine area, not far from the coast, which means the grapes, and these are Cabernet Sauvignon, they get that early morning mist from the sea, which adds a bit of minerality, some say a bit of saltiness. But what it also does, it adds the possibility of botrytis. This is the famous rot that grapes love, and that if you're trying to make a sweet wine, you're trying to make a late harvest Cabernet, a late harvest Sauvignon Blanc, not Cabernet Sauvignon, it's exactly what you need. These are the lowest and the coldest grapes, and it's what makes them so interesting. They get that rot, they're pressed, they're fermented in oak barriques. Oak barriques are small French barrels that come over from France that then lend it a bit of extra oakiness. And I think if you're having a sniff with me, a little bit of melon, touch of quince on the nose, and when you drink it, there's jasmine, there's orange blossom, but because there's this incredibly important acidity that I've been banging on about all night, it means it's not too cloying and not too sweet. My final wine this evening, £9.50 for a half bottle. If you wish to purchase that, Morandé Late Harvest Sauvignon Blanc. That is it for me and from all my wines. Rich?
Lovely. Can I ask a dessert wine question very quickly, William? So a bottle like that, how long would you leave a bottle like that open for?
Well, it's the same with any bottle of wine. It's rather the same as, you know, bottles of sherry. People open a bottle of sherry and then they put it in a decanter and it sits around for a year. Sherry is a wine. This is a wine. This is a wine that needs to be drunk. Like most wines, if you open it, and if it's a white, keep it in the fridge. You keep reds in the fridge, of course, to let it keep a little bit longer. Always bring it up to temperature. The important thing, of course, is for me, don't drink your reds too warm. Don't drink your whites too cold. I think there is an excuse, however, for making sure that your sweet wines are a little bit chilly when they come out of the fridge. They can come up to temperature. But if you're worried about the cloying sweetness, if it does have a tendency to do that, of course, the coolness will put that at bay. But then as you get stuck into something like this apple toffee cake, you'll really love that extra sweetness that comes from the wine.
William, thank you very much indeed. Two very quick things for me, then I think we're going to go to Charlie to say a last goodbye from the quarry. Firstly, what we'd love you to do, please, is to continue donating to chefs in schools. It might well be that you're now looking across your kitchen worktops to see a whole sea of food, which will feed you through tomorrow as well. Think of that as a bonus, and you may even think about reflecting that bonus in a further donation to Chefs in Schools, again, a fantastic charity doing really important work. So virginmoneygiving.com, search for Hackney School of Food, and you can donate if you would like to do so. We're also really keen to find out how this evening has been for you. And so you'll find in the chat in Zoom a link to a very short survey, which would be great if you could spend a couple of minutes before finishing tonight. Just let us know how it was for you. I would be really keen to hear. So please do continue donating. Please, if you could spare us 2 minutes to fill in that survey, we'd be very appreciative. Should we go back to the quarry, William?
Let's go to the quarry. Is there a man called Mr. Bigham in the quarry? Come on, we can't let you go away without a final goodbye, Charlie.
Well, it's a final goodbye from here, our quarry kitchen, and I hope that everybody has a fantastic evening, and in fact that the evening may have only just beginning for many people as they sit down and tuck into their venison with that delicious pudding to come. So thank you very much, and good night from our lovely quarry kitchen.
Thank you, Charlie, and let's just thank again our amazing chefs who we've learned so much from and been so inspired from all around the country. Rupert Wilday, there, of course, in the Charlie Bigham kitchen, rescuing us all at a key moment when Tommy's kitchen was smoking. It was great to see Mark Hicks down there in Lyme Regis. Do visit his restaurant in Lyme Regis if you can. If you happen to be down there by the Jurassic Coast, down there in Dorset, do stop by Hicks's fish truck, because it really is wonderful to see him there at work. Henry Harris, there he was, staging his sit-in at Charlie Bigham's house somewhere in swanky London. I wonder if he'll still be there in the weeks to come with his lovely wife Denise, who was filming everything so beautifully. Tommy Myers joined us from her kitchen, of course. What an incredible dish of venison. And Merlin LeBron Johnson, a big, generous, huge apple cake. And I hope that all of you have really enjoyed this evening. Rich, it's been fantastic.
Likewise, William, thank you. A pleasure to spend the evening in your company.
Cheers.
One last thing, William,
yes.
just to say, so people may have food left over. But also, we hope that these are recipes which you would enjoy at other points as well. And there will be edited clips of tonight available at a later point as well, so do watch out for those. I think we're done, William.
I think we're done.
Should we say goodbye?
We'll say goodbye. Well, from Rich and from me and from everyone at the Bigham's Banquet, have a wonderful evening, and we hope we'll see you all again soon.
Good night.